Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for the compliments, Seth. The sentiment's mutual. So, no, thank you so much, Adorama, for having me here. Thank you, Flashpoint, for having me here. Thank you, Printique, for having me here. I'm being told to step forward. I know, whenever there's live stuff like this, I always find myself in exactly the wrong space. We're just going to work through this. We just wanted to do something for you today where I was deconstructing my process. And I think for a lot of these things, I was just talking with the live audience here. You know, you see a setup like this, and then you feel like you walk into it and everything's already done. I want to deconstruct all of this down to baser thought process. So I want you to know why I'm doing the things that I'm doing, not just how I'm doing the things that I'm doing. And I want this to be interactive. So I could sit here and talk to you for an hour straight. He can vouch for this. I could probably do that for about 10 hours straight because I like to talk and I'm good at it. But I want this to be a dialogue between us. So if you have any questions, you're here in the audience, ask. Have any questions out there on the stream, please ask. There are no bad questions, right? And more than likely, if you have a question, there's 5 other people who are wondering the exact same thing. So just ask it and give me a chance to address that and be of service to you. We have Gerald here with us, who I'm so excited to photograph. I had an opportunity to pick who I wanted to photograph. Come on, people, clap for Gerald, everyone. Darn it. I had an opportunity to select who I wanted to photograph, and it was a couple of things. Obviously, he has a wonderful aesthetic, but in his photos, he just had an energy about him. And I talk about that a lot with my portrait subjects. I really just like to photograph unique human beings. And I think we're all wonderfully unique in our own ways, but there was, for some reason, I just felt drawn to him, and we've been talking. He was in the fashion industry. I was in the fashion industry. He heard that I'm from Denver, and he's like, no way. Whereabouts? And I'm like, oh, well, here. And I'm like, where are you from? He said, Wheat Ridge. It's literally like 5 minutes away from where my studio's at. So he's now here in Denver. He's been in Paris. I'm all over the place. And we have like half a degree of separation. So that actually goes back to the thing that I want to start with, or I guess circles into the thing that I wanted to start with, and that is connection. And that's what my process is really all about. So we have lights, we have backdrops, we have lenses, we have gear, we have all of the fancy stuff, the stuff we nerd out on, the really fun stuff. But really, this is an art form that's about human beings. It's about people. And so if we lose sight of that, nothing else matters. You can have a photograph that's technically sound, you can have a photograph that's really beautiful, but if it doesn't have depth, if you're not taking the time to connect with the human being in front of you, then ultimately it's going to be hollow. So more than anything else, I want to encourage you to return to that. Stay connected to yourself and stay connected to the people in front of you. And that's when you're going to create images that are really impactful. And especially for those of you who are doing this for work, remember, when your client is looking at a photo after the fact, they're not seeing the photo, they're seeing the experience. So if Gerald retained me to photograph him in this way, he's not going to be reviewing the images after going like, oh, I really like how he used Rembrandt light and his 2:1 ratio is fantastic. And the fact that he used an 85 1.4 Sony GM made me look stellar. He's not going to be thinking any of those things. He's going to say, oh, we laughed together, we cried together, we told stories, we were there. He's going to feel what he felt. It is an archive of the moments that you share with the people in front of you. And that's what's most important. Now, with that being said, obviously we're going to get into lighting because light and shadow is how we speak language. It's how we tell other people's stories. But I think it's really important to just set an energetic precedent of staying in that space of mind and not losing sight of the person. I know for me, when I first got into this, I was hyper fixated on wanting to look like a professional, right? So people walked into my studio and I'm like, I have big lights and I have big lenses and I have big things and they're shiny and this and that, you know? And it was then I would walk around with my lats flared and I'm like, yeah, I'm a big deal. And it's because I was masquerading because I didn't feel comfortable in my art form, right? I wanted people to perceive me in a way that I myself didn't perceive. Seth, mute. Sorry. No, I'm just joking. No, Seth's just ripping me over here. But like, I wanted people to perceive me in a way that I did not perceive myself. And so I built that up. But what I didn't realize is as I was building that up, I was building distance between me and the person in front because I wasn't staying present. And if I'm not present, there's no space for Gerald to be present. If I'm not authentic, there's not space for Gerald to be authentic. So the people in front of our camera mirror our energy. They mirror our space, they mirror our place, they mirror our mindset. So it all comes back to that. And with that being said, I'm going to get into this because I could just do my TED Talk for the entire hour and someone out there is going to be like, Jonny, I wanted to learn about lighting. Let's get into lighting. So the first thing that I'll talk about is the set, and I did not know what Gerald was going to wear, all right? So this is a happy coincidence that he came in with the blues and the blacks. We have the black on the table. We have these kind of greens and yellows behind him. But what Seth and I came to was we wanted to have layers for a set because that's how I tend to shoot. So in my studio, I work with a lot of canvas. I work with a lot of layered sets, and what I really want is depth and dimension. Because with photography, of course, we're working with a two-dimensional medium, and I want to create the illusion of a third dimension. So I do that through light, I do that through shadow, and I do that through texture. In this case, we have two of these. Are these 5x7s or are these 7x7s or 5x7s?
I think they're 5x7.
No, I don't think so either. I think they're 7x7s. But we have these really cool modular 7x7 background systems from Manfrotto. And so we pulled 2 of these out. And initially, I was just thinking of doing this in black and white. But this little bit of space here allows us to light this background separately, Gerald separately, and create a sense of depth in this. So depending on what our settings are here, we're going to see this front portion, we're going to see this portion right behind Gerald, and then we're going to see a back portion. And that's going to lend itself to depth in our scene. I never want something to feel flat. One of the greatest compliments on the technical side to me is when someone's like, Johnny, it feels like I can reach out and touch the people in your photos. And I'm like, don't do that without consent, right? Ask first. But ultimately, bad jokes aside, like I want there to be a sense of depth. And then we start to lean into that with shadow. The other thing that's really compelling to me are just the textural elements. If you know my work, you know I leave light stands in, you know I leave background stands in, and there's sort of an industrial feel to that. And it makes even more sense to me when Gerald came in and we talked about his background. As a hairstylist, as a multi-medium artist, he spent 3 decades on sets for fashion. And so he has been in these environments. So it was kind of an unintentional consequence. But now when I'm looking at this and seeing Gerald on a set, I'm seeing even more about him because this is part of his story. Being on sets like this, on stages like this is part of who he was for a very long time and part of who he is now, even though he shifted into painting more, which we were talking about. That's one other thing that I want to say here is it's really kind of curious because ultimately I want to show you what my process is. But I'm kind of constricted because if we were here alone and you weren't here like we were earlier, I would just be sitting here talking. We're like, oh, this and oh, that. But obviously I'm having to educate at the same time. And I love that. And I appreciate you all being here. But there's an element of what I do that you can't see because the fact that all of you are watching and I'm teaching to you while you're watching precludes me being able to do that in real time. But I just want you to know that generally speaking, like I'm talking a lot more with the people who are in front of my camera. I think that's one thing that we don't do enough of as photographers is just spend time connecting and communicating. And I'm working with, normally if Gerald came in, I would be setting up these lights around him just as another back note. So I have a general idea of what I'm going to do, but I don't have my lights set and metered before someone comes in. And the reason being is when Gerald walks into my studio, I lift this light up and I start adjusting for it and I look and then I light this light up. And by the time I actually get to taking the first real photo, I know about the man, I know about the person, I know about the human being, and he knows about me. So now there's a reciprocal energy that's at place where he's feeling comfortable, I'm feeling comfortable, and we can focus on making some really incredible art. So that's sort of just the precedent of what's going on there. On the technical side, we're using Flashpoint gear today. Once again, thank you, Flashpoint. I'm gonna get into these lights one at a time so I don't overwhelm you with technical information. And then camera-wise, I'm using a Sony a7R4. Lens-wise right now, I'm using a 35 1.2 from Viltrox. The lenses are really great from Viltrox. If you haven't used them, I definitely recommend checking them out. They punch way above their price. Categorically speaking, I use the 35 a lot. So if you know my work at all, 90% of my work is shot with the 35. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, and what I really love about the 35 is it very closely approximates the way the human eye sees. So if I'm this close, pardon me invading your space for a second, Gerald, but if I'm this close to Gerald, right, his face is going to distort a little. So people talk about distortion with the 35, but if he's in my frame of vision, his face is going to distort, and that's what the 35 does. So to me, the 35, the distortion from it is very natural, because if someone's face is filling the frame, it feels like you're present with them in that space. So there's a certain level of like visceral intimacy about this focal length that I find very compelling. I still use 85s now and again too, but the way that the 85 creates compression in the face, that's not how a person looks when you're that close to them. And there's even that division, which I'm sure some of you have had before, where someone sees a photo taken with an 85 or a 135 and they're like, that's not me, right? Because they're not familiar with their face. The psychological ramifications of that are twofold, because most of us now know our faces based on our phones, okay? So most of us know this. We have a phone in front of us, and guess what? That is a wide-angle lens on that phone. You are not looking at yourself with a 50 or an 85, you're looking at yourself with a 16, an 18, a 24. So your nose is getting a little bit bigger, your face is slimming, and then we're on our phones, and then we do this, we go, and then we do this, and we do that, and then we do this, and we find our lines, and then someone sees their face with more natural lighting with an 85, and they're like, that's not me. That's not what my face looks like. And that's beyond the scope of what we're gonna get into right now. But I will just say, if you haven't tried working with something like a 35 for portraits, I suggest giving it a go. And they're all tools. So before we really get into this, the other thing that I wanna say is there is no right or wrong. We're artists. You know, we're not technicians. There's no right lighting, there's no wrong lighting, there's no right lens, there's no wrong lens. I know people who use 200mm lenses and get great results. I know people who use 16mm lens and get great results. It's about what your vision is, what you are trying to say and convey, and the story you're trying to tell about the person in front of your camera. And there's enough dogma and that stuff, so just leave that by the wayside. Just play and experiment and see what feels right. And as you see me go through this, that's what I'm very driven by. There's an intuitive point at some point here that I'm gonna go, that just looks right to me. It feels right to me. And I'm gonna do my best to deconstruct that, but it's not because of a ratio. It's not because of a lighting pattern. It's not because it's Loop or Rembrandt or whatever Seth was making fun of me for earlier that I can't even recall. It's simply because it feels right relative to the person in front of me. So you have to learn to trust yourself. And once you start to trust yourself, that's where your vision and voice as an artist starts to emerge. As you build on that, that's when you have people like Gerald coming to you going, hey, Seth, I want you to photograph me because I love what you do and only you do what you do. And that really comes down to just standing in your own shoes confidently. But obviously that's a stepwise process. So with that being said, we're gonna start building out our light, and we have a Flashpoint 600 SE. I use these extensively. Generally speaking, when I'm in my studio, I have at least 600 watts on my strobe heads. And if you have a 200, it's okay, everyone. So if you're out there and you're like, I only have 200, that's a 200 too. So we're gonna get into that as well. But I just like to have more power than I need, especially because I shoot on location a lot as well. So if I'm outdoors and I'm battling the sun, I'd rather have that 600 watts to work with than be struggling trying to stack two 200s together. But that's a use case scenario. But we're starting with that 600 for our key, and that has the 36-inch Parasnap on it with a grid. So the cool thing about the Parasnaps, if you haven't seen them, I'm not gonna break this down right now, is they literally snap together and they fold flat. So if you're actually bringing something on location, or let's say your studio is like my first studio and you have like 100 square feet, instead of having this giant modifier rolled up in the corner, they fold flat almost like paper and you can stack them. And also, yeah, Seth is like, just show the people what they want to see. All right, so, okay, where? Wait, right where?
Your matcha can go under here.
Oh, I thought you said there's a couple more right here, and that made no sense to me.
I just don't want to see a cup of matcha hit the floor. So
that's part of my process. Yeah. My process is ruined now, Seth. I have to spill matcha every shoot.
Artists will tell you anything.
Oh, we're rowing again. I'm telling you. See, now Seth, I'm going to bring one of these down, and I'm going to just look like an ass. Anyway, okay, so literally, if you're opening one of these up, it's down, it's folded flat. This is kind of a paid advertisement. No, not really, but they're just really cool. So I mean, especially if you're having to build stuff down and break it up, they're really, really easy. You want to undo this, it's down. So they're great in terms of space saving and just ease of access. We have the grid on here, and that's important because we're controlling our light and we're controlling our shadow. So if you haven't worked with grids before, one of the big things is if this wasn't on here right now, the light would be coming out in all directions. So it would be coming off the lip of our modifier and it would be hitting back here, it would be hitting over here, it would be coming lower on here, it would be going to the ceiling. I want to control where the light is hitting in my environment. I want to define the light, but more importantly, I want to define the shadow. I want to be able to decide where the edge of shadow is on my backdrop. I want to be able to decide where the edge of shadow is on my subject. So we're really shaping light when we start to integrate things like grids onto modifiers. So I'm almost always using a grid on my key. And then what we're going to do from there after we structure our shadows is we're going to start to fill those shadows. We're going to start to modulate, and then we're going to build layers of light into the scene from there. So I don't know what I had this at before. I'm just going to take a test shot. I will say I don't meter things, and I have really bad ADHD, if you can't tell. And so really what that turns out to be is I have to get started. If I try and plan the perfect setup in my mind, I will never do anything. It's literally paralysis by analysis. So if I happen to have a light up like this and Gerald walks into the studio, I might start here and then I'm going to go, oh, it's too hard, it's too soft, it's too close, it's too far away. What'd you do, buddy? It's one of those things, and then I just make a decision from there. And my camera went to sleep, of course. Also, come on, friend. Seth, what did you do to my computer? And my battery is exhausted. So we were just talking about me being a pro. Even pros run out of batteries sometimes. Come on, Seth.
Some of us talk so much that our batteries run out. That's what happens.
Seth's social battery ran out about 2 hours ago, so it only figures that my camera follows suit. So I will say,
that's the only thing that goes wrong. You're fine.
I will say a really big thing too that I think is one of the best skills that we can have as I'm opening this up as photographers is just to be able to roll with the punches, right? Things are going to happen on set, and like Gerald's attitude as my client, as my subject is going to depend on me. So if all of a sudden one of my strobes doesn't fire and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, or it's one of those days, then all of a sudden he's going to start taking that on, right? So like we'll work around it no matter what happens. If I have to use Seth's camera, I'm going to make it work. So just maintain that level of confidence, and even if you're not feeling it, fake it till you make it. Because ultimately, whoever is there in the room with you is going to be picking up on that energy for better and for worse. And Seth, you'll be happy to know I have 4 backup batteries in my bag.
Oh,
Thank you.
It's a clap for that. What? Oh man. Oh.
See, when you set the precedent low for yourself, Seth, like you can just jump up on it.
Never.
Seth's gonna quit the industry after this live. Like,
This is quitting during this live. I am out, man. You guys have any questions while he's, being unprepared?
Valid point. No, seriously, does anyone have any questions in the chat, or do any of you have any questions or comments or anything right now? No? Good. Well, and I think for me, one of the big things is just to see, like, in my mind, I always assumed that the people I looked up to as photographers, like, it was like Fantasia, right? They walked in and they snapped their fingers and the lights moved around. They took 2 frames and like, I'm done. And they walked out. It's like, as long as we've been doing this, Seth and I worked into this process today. We worked into the lights, we worked into the backgrounds, we worked into all of this. We modified, we shifted, we shaped. It is a stepwise process. All right, let there be camera battery.
While he's doing that, if you guys are in the chat, there's 105 of you and only 28 likes. He feeds himself on likes.
I will stop talking unless I get 10 more likes.
That's the way to do it.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. I will. This is nonviolent resistance. Give me more likes. Give Adorama, give Seth more likes too. Seth needs it. Seth's having a rough day, everyone. Like, if he doesn't get more likes, like, seriously, like, I'm gonna have to take him to therapy after this. So
Get shooting.
okay. Anyway, I told you I talk a lot.
What did I pay you for? Let's go.
So to those who are out there right now, like I mentioned, when we first got onto the live, we have these 2 backdrops that we have layered for depth. Here we have that 600 with a 36-inch octa with a grid. That's going to be our key. For our fill light, we're using a can on this. So it's another 600 watt pro, and we're bouncing this into the ceiling and corner. So we're going to use this for environmental fill. We're going to see what that looks like in a second. And then we're using this as a background light. So it's a 200 watt AD, and we have that with a 24-inch Perisnap beauty dish with a grid. So we'll actually start building this out one by one so you can see what's going on. So let's just take our first shot here, and we're just gonna see what it looks like and then kind of build out. Now, Gerald is really good at this, right? He's so comfortable being on set, so you're not gonna see me having to work him into being easeful. As we're talking, he's just like, GQ, dapper, fabulous, fantastic, right? So like, I don't even have to really give him any cues on this, but earlier he had dropped into this pose and he was talking about being in Paris and things, and I was like, I love that. So we're starting with that as a central pose. I'm just gonna start with wherever this light is, like I said, and we're just gonna take a peek at what this is like, and then we're gonna go from there. So that is the beginning of our light. So what I'm looking at here is, what does the structure of light look like on Gerald's face? How are our shadows looking? How is our light looking? What's going on with all of this? And this to me is a really good base to start. So we're almost completely direct with this modifier. We're not feathered off. We have direct light, we have controlled light. I'm keeping the light soft, even though it's contrasty, because that modifier is close to Gerald. Remember, the bigger the size of the modifier relative to your subject, the softer the light. So if we take something big and get it close, the light's going to be soft, but it's also going to have rapid fall off, and it's going to be contrasty. So if you look at my work and you see kind of, they'll call it painterly. We had a row about this earlier. But if you see that, it really starts with large, soft, contrasty light, or harder light sources that we then modulate. But this is looking good to start. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add in our second light. So I'm looking at the shadows on camera left, the right side of Gerald's face in this photo, and I want to start to lift those, because to me, those transitions right now are pretty abrupt. It's falling into dense shadow, and we're sort of moving directly from highlights here or midtones into shadows, and it's a rough transition. So one thing that I like to see in skin for my photos is smooth tonal transitions. So when we move to highlights, to midtones, to shadows, there's density in each one of those, but there's a smooth roll off throughout, and we're gonna do that by adding in this fill. Now, of course, when we do that, we're not just filling Gerald, we're filling the entire scene. So we're gonna bring more detail into the texture of these backdrops. We're gonna start to see more of the depth of those backdrops, and we're gonna lift the shadows and the exposure in our entire scene. So we're gonna go ahead and bring that in next. Am I moving at a good pace for you now, Seth? You happy?
It's your, I'm not, what is this? I'm
putting you on the spot.
I'm quiet, man.
I'm teasing.
Look at this guy.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm feeling vulnerable and abused now. I don't know. Why am I being bullied?
This is going to be the hashtag cancel Johnny, he bullied Seth. All right, so I currently have this set to 1/8 power. Just for those of you out there who are, driven by that, this is at 132. So our key is at 132 power. Our fill light is currently set at 1/8 power. I am at f6.3, 35 millimeters, of course, for the focal length, 1/200th of a second, and ISO 200. So I'm just going to take another test shot here, and now I brought that fill light into the scene, and we're going to see what this looks like. So that made a massive difference. Let's zoom this out for a second and just toggle that. So as we bounce that into the back, look at how that dramatically changed everything. So we've lifted the overall exposure of our scene, we've modulated the shadows on Gerald, and we've kept that lighting pattern, right? that lighting and the structure in his face, the dimensionality, the depth is still there, but now we have smoother tonal transitions through the skin. So especially as we start to look into that shadow side, this just beautifully bleeds off from highlights to midtones to shadows. Now that I'm opening this up and thinking about Gerald more and knowing him more, I'm actually gonna bring that fill light down a little bit because I think we've lost some of the mystery there. It's a little bit too bright in the shadows for me. So I'm gonna bring that down probably half a stop and take a peek, but he was talking about Paris, he was talking about fashion. I'm like, this guy's been there, done that. So we need to add some shadows into his story a little bit more, right? So I'm just gonna bring that down a smidge, then we're gonna take one more test shot. And this is what I do in terms of process. I create an anchor. So for the anchor, we had colors, we had layers on the set. For the anchor with our light, we had our key. We get that anchor in place. We don't adjust anything else. And then we start bringing in these other elements piecewise, one at a time.
There's a question in the chat.
Please.
So Heidi's asking, do you just go with the glasses, then fix when there are reflections?
No, so if there's, I do everything I can to avoid reflections, right? So one of the big things right away is that we're not using direct light. So it's almost like when you play pool, right? The way you keep reflections out of glasses is you alter your subject's face relative to the light or the light relative to your subject's face. So at some point I might see when Gerald turns his nose this way toward the light that there's a reflection. Rather than dealing with that in post, I would rather just say, hey, Gerald, bring your chin down and over an inch. Right, so I'm constantly trying to fix that. Seth and I talked about this earlier. I try and get it right in camera. Not because I'm a purist, but because that makes me feel like an artist. One thing I've always struggled with my life and as a photographer is feeling like a genuine creative and artist. And if I can look at the back of my camera and say, I've taken the time to get it right, that makes me feel fulfilled. If you're doing things like taking care of glasses in post, using AI, doing compositing, whatever that might be, that's great, right? It's all process. But for me to feel my best, I would rather focus on getting it right here and keeping as little work as possible on the back end for me because I've spent my days, 60-hour weeks working in front of a computer and in a corporate environment, and that's not why I picked up a camera. So I'd rather stay here, be traveling or doing something else instead of sitting at my workstation wondering what the point of it all is. But that's an existential jaded thing that we won't get into right now. So I've turned that down to from 1/8 to we're gonna go to 1/16 here in terms of our power. Da-da-da, da-da. And that's perfect, just like that, Joe. And a deep breath in. And normally I do the breathing thing to get people relaxed, but it looks like he was born to be in front of the camera. So this makes my job very easy. And there's always this feedback, right? So that's another thing that I'm doing with the people in front of my camera. I'm always giving them reinforcement. Another thing that can happen is we get really quiet. And here's this, right? Let's say Gerald has never been in front of the camera before. And now I'm sitting here and I haven't used strobes before. It's my first time using 2 strobes and I'm nervous. So I'm shaking in my boots and I'm looking at it and I don't understand why my strobe's not flashing and I'm making this face. I'm going, ugh, ugh. And I'm looking at him and he's like, what is going on with my face? Do I look like a monster? Right? Simply communicating and saying that out loud. Hey, this is a new light. I'm trying to figure it out. Thank you for being patient with me. It diminishes that right away. So just make sure that you're constantly staying in communication with the person in front of your camera so they're not wondering and creating a narrative of their own in their mind. So this to me is looking lovely now, right? It's structured, it's dimensional, it's kind of regal. Overall, as a base level exposure, this is looking really, really solid. The one thing that I am noticing is that this metal frame is throwing me for a bit of a loop here, right? The way that we read images is we see the brightest part of the image, the part with most contrast, and the part with the greatest degree of separation. So given the fact that this is just pure metal, bare metal, my eyes are going to the frame. So Seth and I talked about this earlier. He's gonna be kind enough to throw some gaff tape on there. Obviously, because of this setup, I might be floating a backdrop normally using something like a Mathellini clamp over the top. We didn't have that available to us, so when in doubt, gaff it up. Right? We're just gonna throw some gaff tape on it. That's gonna completely change the tone here, and now it's gonna appear as though it's floating, and it's... Okay, perfect. But this alone is gonna make a huge difference. So I'm gonna take that same frame one more time, Gerald. Perfect. And I'm getting a little bit closer here just to make sure I'm not getting those overhead bars as well. That's huge. Huge, huge difference, right? And that's one of those details that you wouldn't notice, or some people wouldn't notice at first, but that's going to draw focus away. If we are not deciding where people start in our image and where they end, it's being decided for us. So anytime I'm looking at a scene, I'm going, what is pulling my focus away from my subject? Another thing that we did is I had Teresa, who's in the back right now. Hi, Teresa. She's wonderful. And I had her bring us a tablecloth. And the reason being is we wanted to have this stage, But the way that this texture and color is, this would have drawn all the attention to the top, right? It's brighter, it's highly reflective, it looks acrylic. Everything else out here is highly textured and organic. So we bring in something that's inorganic and that's brighter than anything else in the scene. Instead of keeping our eyes on Gerald, it's gonna go here. We didn't have another canvas to throw over the top. This isn't an expensive muslin. This is literally just a piece of random fabric that we throw down the top to make sure that we're keeping cohesion in our scene. So it's little details like that that make a huge difference. This is all looking really, really good to me now. The one thing that I want to do is show off this depth a little bit more, right? That was my funny bone, and it wasn't funny at all. So I want to show off this depth a little bit more. So what we're going to do now is we're going to use this beauty dish, that 24-inch that has the grid on it, and we're going to start throwing some light down. Now the position I have this in, it's going to throw some light to the backdrop here, but we're also allowing some of that light to skirt in to get a little bit of highlight here as well. And then we're going to start to see a greater division between those two pieces. And this is another thing, I think I have it at 132 power right now. There's no direct significance of that. I'm just going to turn it on, and if it's too bright, I lower it. If it's too bright, or if it's too dark, I raise it, right? So it's just a stepwise process for everything. So we're gonna turn that light on. You're doing amazing, by the way, Gerald.
Oh, thank you.
And it's so funny, because like the people I wind up photographing at events like this are the folks I would want to spend like a day with or a half day with and just photograph them and get to know them. So I was like, next time you're in Denver, please drop me a note so we can spend a day together at the studio just creating portraits and, you know, getting to know each other a little bit better. All right, so that's at 132 power for reference for all of you on that backlight right now. I'm gonna take a test shot and just see what that looks like. And so you can see that's a subtle difference to start, right? But you can actually just start to see that gaff tape a little bit more, and I kind of like that, because what's happening here to my eye is I'm seeing more dimension. I'm seeing more depth. We've lost a little bit of that shadow there, but I can clearly see that these are two different pieces in the scene. I'm probably not gonna turn that up anymore, but I might actually wanna get a little bit more light off of this, right? I might be throwing a little bit too much light on this, and it's just personal preference. So all that I'm gonna do is start to feather that light to the background a little. And we're gonna do this, and obviously as we're doing that, we're throwing more light onto this back layer, and we're throwing less light onto the front layer and that gaff tape, and we're just gonna take another shot. So when I say we work into the process, this is it. And I kind of futz around, and if Gerald was in the studio with me the entire time, I'd be talking to him. I'd say, so tell me, what was your favorite project you did in Paris? Oh, you worked with them too, that's so fantastic. So the entire time, as I'm adjusting all of this, I'm staying in communication with my subject, and we're building more and more rapport. So they're not sitting there going like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. They're sitting there going, oh, wow, he's taking the time to get this right, and he's asking me questions, and he's actively listening, and we have these things in common. So when I pick up my camera again, instead of there being more distance between us, we're closer energetically. And so each successive change is actually bringing us closer, not further apart. And I think that's really important to take note of. So we're just gonna give that one more go. And once again, once we get this light dialed in, then we're gonna play with posing and all that type of stuff as well. And let's just take a peek here. So we can see what happens. Like up in the left-hand corner, you can see how there's more light being thrown onto the backdrop there versus there. And I like that. So to my eye, that's a really, really nice fade right now. The back obviously is a little bit brighter than the front, but Gerald is more heavily exposed than anything else. So his skin is now the brightest part of the image. We have these really lovely layers coming back and through. In post, I might change this to blue. I can even do that in Capture One real quick. So I might shift this purple more to blue to play with what's going on with the underlayer in his outfit a little bit. In an ideal world, I would have done that up front, but we were working with a few different backdrops and just making it work to some extent. But this is a great starting point. To me, this is something that I would feel really good about out of the gate. So we're just gonna work through a couple of poses here, and then we'll just do a reassessment. So are you a person who would ever bring hands up like this into something contemplative, thinking about your paintings?
Sure.
We were talking about some of the paintings that he does earlier, and it's fascinating. And I always ask somebody if it feels right to them, right? Because like I'm an anxious person, if you can't tell. So I'm like this. Like if I'm sitting and I'm hanging on to things, but some people just aren't like that, right? Some people don't go to face. So I'll say, hey, would you ever bring your hand up and think that way? And if they go, no, I'm like, shake that out. We're not gonna do it. If they are, we just sort of play with it and see how that works. Yeah.
Question in the chat.
Please.
If your subject has bright earrings or a bright shirt or something distracting on, how do you keep the attention of the shot on the face?
So in that, if it's something like earrings, I'm just gonna say maybe take those earrings off, unless they're vitally important to the shoot or the person. So if it's like, oh, my grandmother gave me these earrings and it's really special, at that point I might look at more controlled lighting or something like that. For a shirt, I'm never going to put myself in a position where I have to talk about that in the shoot, right? So if you came to me, I would be very clear about the colors that I want. I would be very clear about the patterns that I want. I would say, hey, no white, no saturated pinks, no this and that. So if you have an opportunity to, this is where being communicative in consultations, whether it's creative work or paid work, really, really comes in handy. Same thing, whenever I have an opportunity, whether it's personal work or commissioned work, I ask people to send me the things that they're going to bring. So I'm not trying to sidestep that question. I just find it's a lot easier to deal with that beforehand, so you're not having to deal with that on set. If we are talking about a shirt, of course, what we could do here, let's say he was wearing a white shirt, we could raise this back, or the modifier up a little. We could bring a flag in, we could bring netting in. There's a bunch of different ways we could deal with that on set, but I would just rather not have to accommodate in that way. The other thing is, to me, that's sort of telling someone that what they did is wrong. Right? If I have to ask someone to take their earrings out, or I have to build something around, or tell them to take their clothes off, if you're already uncomfortable in front of the camera, and I'm like, go change into a different outfit. Take those earrings off, they're not working. Like automatically, there's sort of an energetic shift there. So that just comes down to being very, very communicative up front. But it just depends on the scenario too, whoever asked that question. Ideally, you wouldn't be in that position, but then there's modifications you can make relative to what's going on. And that's sort of the gist of it for me. But anything that I could do to not run into problems like that in set, I'd rather head off at the pass than have to deal with. That's great, just like this. And chin's gonna come up just a little. That's perfect. When I'm cueing people, a really important thing is cueing effectively. So it's not even about like, oh, posing with triangles, all of these triangles and all the geometric stuff. If I'm saying, Gerald, bring your eyes up, I'm gonna say, bring your eyes here. If I'm asking someone to tilt their head, I'm gonna say, tilt your head this way as I do it. One of the ways that you can really be discouraging to the people in front of your camera, if you're like, hey, just move your head a little. Hey, can you just do something different with your shoulders? The person is there because you're a professional. You need to professionally guide them through positioning. So be very clear when you're saying it. If I want eyes here, I'm gonna say eyes right here. Bring your eyes up, you're gonna look behind me, you're gonna look through me. So all of it is very clear instruction. And that way when I go to take the photo, there's no back and forth, because then I don't have to say, Gerald, look at me, but not like that. Oh, that's almost there, but not quite there. Not quite there, not like that. And then you start micromanaging, and then the person's like, they don't know what I'm doing, or maybe my face just doesn't work for photos. And it just gets really weird really quick. So that's perfect, just like that. And chin's gonna come up just a little. And a deep breath in again. And I'm always cueing on breathing, just like that, perfect. And I'm gonna just play with some different positions here, and we're gonna see what we're looking at. That's great. And I'm gonna kind of let this bleed over into the other background. Chin's gonna come down a little now, just like that. And do you see that difference between those two, everyone? The glasses, right? So this shot to this shot. The difference in having the reflection in the glasses versus it not being there was movement in the chin of about an inch or so. So really the details matter so much for these types of shoots. I will say another reason why I like to build out sets like this where it's layered, and oftentimes I won't just have layers of backdrops, but in my studio, or if I had another one of these, I might have another backdrop here coming in at an L. And the reason being is because then I can step into the short side of light, the shadowed side of light, and shoot. So I can shoot from frontal, I can shoot from camera left, I can shoot from camera right. So without changing anything in the scene, that's drastically changing. And I'm gonna shoot 3 different positions really quickly so that you can see how different that light looks. And we'll just stay in the same position. Perfect, that's great, Gerald. And we'll stay there, and your eyes will just stay right here. And so ignoring the ancillary stuff in the background, if we just take a peek at how different all 3 of these look, there is a massive difference in how these images read, right? This one right here is very kind of broad, it's open. I would call it commercial and expected. The one into short side light, people would say that's very cinematic, it's very moody, it's very dramatic. And then the one where I was shooting dead on is somewhere in between. But just by pivoting around 3 or 4 feet relative to my setup, I'm getting a very, very different type of image. Very similarly, if I were to come in, and we'll stay right here like this, Gerald, if I were to shoot over the top versus I were to shoot here, versus shooting low to high, the way that all of these images are going to read is also incredibly different. So if we look at these 3 next to each other, that reads so different. So if you combine up, down, and then side to side, just by pivoting around and altering the angle relative to your subject, you're telling a completely different story. One big thing that I really avoid doing is this. And obviously this isn't exactly lighting, but it's shooting over the top of someone. Because now all of you who are here with me looking at this photo, and all of you who are out there watching the stream, you're looking down on Gerald, right? The perspective is you're looking down on him. There is something really, really powerful in a bad way to me about now looking down on this man whom I'm trying to celebrate. So you will almost always see me shooting at eye level or below because I want to be seeing a person here or I want to be lifting them up. I never want to be diminishing them. And there's a really big thing that we do or some people do in the industry that to me just gets under my skin. And especially if let's say you're full figured and you put your head forward and they turn shoulders away and they shoot with a 35 and they do this, and you minimize a person. You minimize their body, you minimize their presence. Don't be the person who does that, right? Every body deserves to be celebrated, so keep a close eye on what you're doing angle-wise. It makes a really massive difference, and especially when someone looks at that photo of themselves, if they're looking at a photo and they're being minimized like that, you're reinforcing a really, really negative pattern there. So we have power, a lot of power as photographers. It's important that we maintain that and know that we can either be lifting people up and celebrating them or diminishing them. And it's really our choice depending on what we're doing and what's happening creatively on our sets. So let's see here. What do we want to play with? Let's do this, Gerald. I'm going to have you take up space. Okay. So like instead of just being kind of compressed here, we can play with hands coming off the edge of the table. We can kind of shift through here. Okay. The reason I like doing this is because I love the metaphor of starting with boxes, because I feel like we all put ourselves in boxes. Family puts us in boxes, partners put us in boxes, society puts us in boxes. And so the metaphor of starting here and then starting to break out of that is really, really strong for me. And it's also getting someone being more comfortable taking up space. So we start here really guarded, and then we start to move out and take up more space. And we start to build some authority in ourselves with that. That's perfect. And then we can even go a little bit wider if you're comfortable. Great. And then chin's gonna come out toward, I know, oh no, my neoprene is slipping. You know, a pro photographer would have clipped this. No, we'll play with it, we'll leave it. Cool, thank you. All right, that's great, Gerald. And then we can kind of just move through the shoulders if that feels all right to you. There it is, a little shimmy shake. That's great, love, 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 love. Perfect, Gerald. And what I'm gonna do now is we're gonna bump up our key just a little bit. And actually I'm gonna raise this key up a little bit too. So that's the other thing that happened, right? Earlier Gerald was down here, and I had that light set up to him being down here because we're working with the grid and because we're working with controlled light. When Gerald stands up, the light's now in a different position. So before it was closer to him, but it was also above him. Now if we look at the axis of our light, instead of going in an ideal position, we're actually coming down to mid-chest. So since he stood up a couple of feet, we're just gonna take the time to raise that light up a couple of feet as well to maintain the quality of the light and the dimension that we are creating in his features. That's looking fantastic. Perfect. And then I'm just gonna do this again and kind of flood into position.
So the chat's asking, so what about a heavy set type person frame? I guess they're asking, like, how would you approach that?
I mean, so a big part of this comes down to the consultation again, right? Like what's going on with them. Like I really try and convey to the people who I photograph that I want them to be celebrated and seen exactly as they are. You know, so I don't want someone to feel like they have to change. I don't want them to feel like they have to be minimized. So I would pose someone who is more heavy set or full figure, just like I would pose anybody else. We would lean into those curves, we would lean into those lines, we would lean into those shapes. I think like there's ways of doing it that's intelligent, but that really comes down to how that person wants to be seen. So I'm asked questions like this: how would you pose someone who's more full figured? How would you pose a man versus a woman, for instance? How does that person want to be seen? Right? A man can come to me, or a male identifying person, and be like, I'm very soft and feminine. Okay, we're gonna do feminine posing. I have a lot of women who come to me and they don't want fluffy dresses. They don't want pearls and flowing things. They're like, I want to put on a suit and I want to sit here and be a bad B word. I'm going to censor that for Adorama, right? But I want to be a bad B. And I'm like, let's do that. I am going to see them that way. So I do not put my definitions onto the people that I photograph. So I would just have a conversation with them, get to the root of it, and then play with the posing and that type of thing from there. Obviously, depending on body proportions, I'm a little bit more aware of what I'm doing focal length wise. As most of you know, if you're using something like a 35, whatever's closest to the camera is going to be enlarged, right? So if I put my hands forward and you are all photographing me, my hands are going to be sizably bigger than my body proportionately. So I might consider where I'm photographing or my angles a little bit more carefully in that instance, but I'm certainly not going to say, oh, I'm going to move to a different set of posing because they have a different body type. That's just not the way that I personally photograph individuals. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is I'd played with this earlier, is let's go back into that pose again where you kind of came down a little like this, Gerald. And let's just even bring hands down here, there. And so I'm actually gonna move my key light. And the reason I'm gonna do that is because I do this a lot in my sessions. If any of you have ever seen any of the time lapses with me, it's almost kind of like an Oompa Loompa thing. Like it's up, it's down, it's all around. I joke around, it's like capoeira sometimes when I'm doing this because I'm here, I'm there, I'm down, my lights are always moving. And because I'm trying to explore narrative and story through my lighting. So what we're gonna move into here is, Seth will rag on me, but short side lighting. So all that means, everyone, is now the side of the face that's closest to me is going to have shadow on it versus the opposite side. And we're just going to see how that plays into sort of that mystery that I was trying to convey earlier. So I'm just going to bring this around carefully, trying not to destroy this curated set because I don't want to have to buy anything for Seth. As much as I love you, bro. All right.
Just an excuse for me to retire.
There you go. Okay. Well, I'll just start breaking things. That's cool. So what I'm doing now is I'm going to be very mindful of this position. Now, I don't have the modeling lamp on here. In this instance, this is the time when I would turn the modeling lamp on, especially if I had less ambient light in the space. Obviously, we have all of these video lights right now. Yeah, can you turn those off for a second? Oh, okay. Just so we can kind of see what's going on. All right. Okay, so I would want to turn my modeling lamp on here because now I can see what's going on with that light, right? If you don't have a modeling lamp or if you have too much ambient light, you're just guessing. And I don't want to guess. I'd rather be more efficient with my time. So now looking at this, and Seth, can we turn the backlight off for 1 second as well? Now I can actually see what's going on this side, right? So I can start to see the shadow building in. Because of where this light's positioned, even with the grid, I'm still getting a decent amount of wrap. But we're just going to take a shot here and take a peek at it because right now, to me, given what I want to shoot, this is looking really good. It's so much easier to just be able to see what's happening in real time using that modeling lamp. So just like we've been doing, I'm going to take a little test shot here, and then I'll make any adjustments as needed. And that was 2 test shots. That's looking really nice, right? So now, this is one of those instances I love the light right now. I really, really love it. The whole exposure is a little bit dark, so now instead of changing anything with my lights, I'm just gonna make a global change to my aperture. So I'm at 6.3 right now. I'm actually just going to open up to 5.6, and I'm gonna take that same frame, and then we'll see what's going on. And that's just about perfect for me. So now I'm gonna keep him in this position. Gerald, you look absolutely incredible. And Gerald, your nose is gonna come to me just a little. And then your eyes are going to go right to Seth. Perfect. Then we're going to play into this. And these are looking really, really nice. And we'll drop your chin just a hair. And now we'll close your eyes here. Very contemplative. Think about being back in Paris. Think about your paintings. Think about the gentleman we both know in Denver. I just get my meditative NPR voice. I'm like, we're just going to go ahead and go into that place. Let's just relax. Let's just have the tension we're feeling.
Let's paint some happy trees.
Yeah,
just
happy
tap,
trees.
tap, tap.
We're just going to put a nice little background light right there. You don't need to if you don't want to. It's fine.
This is some Bob Ross.
John Ross. John Ross.
Oh, please.
He's a legend. I would never. That's sacrilegious. Bob Ross has my heart. All right, so same thing here. I'm just going to allow myself to pivot around Gerald now that we have this lighting position in play. What happens if I start to step in and see him move on to that back layer? You know, what's that feeling like? What happens if I move around to the broad side a little bit more? And then you're going to look right through the camera here, right there. And this is just giving me a chance to see what these different angles look like. And each one of these are reading. So, and I love that frame. So I didn't think I was going to like it with more direct light. And it turns out that I did. But I'm giving myself a chance to move and try different things. It is so, so important. So let's actually see, Gerald. I want to build this up a little bit more here. I will say, I tend to shoot for long periods of time with people. So if Gerald came into my studio, we might have a 4-hour session, right? I'm not like a mini session person. It's just not how I work. And as we did that, we might play with different styles. We might deconstruct this. We might take that external vest off. We might add other pieces into here. But what I want to see is if I bring a little bit of a buildup in here, how this works. So I'm just going to slide a little quarter box in.
Are you saying they're asking if you're shooting single light now, or is everything?
No. So everything is still firing, everyone. So everything that we had on from the beginning is still on. In here, let me get this box and I'll take a shot with and without the fill, just for reference. Or I'm just making that up and I'm not paying attention to my light. We'll find out in a second. What's that? Let's see. Yeah, it's all going. Your eyes good? Sorry, dude.
I'm used to it.
That's it. This is how you destroy your tech. All right, so obviously the modeling light, so we can turn the lights back on. You already have the house lights back on. We can turn those back on. So I just want to see if this is built up a little bit more. Like what happens if we kind of come and lean into me here? Okay, this is great. And to me, this changes it drastically too, right? Having a little bit more height here and even having some separation from how flat the table is, it's just an interesting little effect. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, but I tend to build layers up as well. If I have someone sit, a lot of times I won't have them sit on a stool. I'll have apple boxes at different angles, and we're just bringing some geometry and lines into the frame to make it a little bit more visually interesting. And we're adding a little bit of visual intrigue without taking away from Gerald. So this is just a way to add into something where someone's gonna stop. I don't create for other people. However, I do create with the awareness that all of my business comes from social media. So I don't spend any marketing dollars. It's all off of primarily Instagram. So I have to get people to stop, right? It's really important for me as an artist to get people to stop to look at my work. So I tend to shoot in series, and I'll put something that I know is a little bit weird or different as the first photo so that people will take the time to stop and swipe through. Because all of a sudden they're like, what's going on there? What is this guy doing? Next. And then they're like, yeah, that's not bad. Next, okay. And then they spend a minute on there, and then the algorithm goes, this guy is creating valuable content for the system, and then more people see my work. So it's just a thought, like even adding in a little bit of visual intrigue can go a long way, taking something from expected to unexpected in terms of how people are relating to your work or how it's being seen relative to the game that we're all playing with social media, which is just part of our life, for better and for worse. All right, I already know that because I changed his position so much, I don't need to take a test shot here. This light is way too off and it's in the wrong position. I can just eyeball this, and I see that so much of this light is now going behind Gerald because he's leaned forward. He's higher, so before I do anything else, I'm just gonna move that forward a little bit. And if anyone hears that sound right now, that's just my brain whirring, trying to figure out my lighting. Don't worry about that. So I'm just gonna bring this light back in and now take another test shot. And I really, really like how this is looking overall. And now something's not firing. And you know what I did? I upped my aperture. So this lens has the aperture ring here. And so I accidentally have this set to unclick. So I move my aperture without thinking about it. I always double check this type of stuff, and I didn't that time. I also, for some reason, have my ISO set to my wheel. And like, I'll just press my face up against the camera and change ISO all the time. So you would think that I would change these settings, and I don't. I just keep struggling. I'm sure my therapist has something to say about that, but we won't get into that right now. We're just gonna carry this forward and chin just a little bit this way, Gerald. That's great, just like that. Ah. That's so fantastic. That is so, so, so fantastic. I really, really love this. Perfect, Gerald. And then eyes will come through me. This is great. I will say, if I was shooting Gerald in my studio, I always start with someone sitting at a table. Always, some sort of table. And the reason being, it's safe, right? You sit at bars together, you sit at restaurants together. I'm half Sicilian. I grew up around a table. So being around a table is so familiar to me. So it's you put someone there, and then you don't have to worry about your legs, and it's just a position that we find ourselves in often. I'm like, hey, I like your look. You know, we just happen to be out somewhere, so it's a safe place. Then we take the table away, and now we're sitting, and we're a little bit more exposed, but we're still sitting. And then finally, we take that chair away, and by then, someone's like, all right, I got this. The nerves have gone away. They've seen a couple of great photos. They're starting to feel themselves. That's my stepwise process, knowing how we psychologically respond to being photographed. Never lose sight of the fact that it's very vulnerable to be in front of the camera, even for people who are experienced doing it. So I'm always just very mindful of that. So that's just a trick I use. If you're starting with people standing, give yourself a chance to try it a different way and just see how your clients or the individuals in front of your camera respond to that. This is amazing. And going back to it, everyone, too, once again, we only have an hour to work together here, and that's kind of unfortunate. If we had more time, if you were in my studio, if it was just Seth and me playing creative, whatever, something rather, we would be moving these backdrops around more. I might bring that backdrop in to make an L here and then use that to flag part of the light coming down. I might bring this in, L over. If I had a smaller backdrop, I might bring it in here. So there would be a lot of experimentation going on. So where I'm going is, as I get to these sets and series, you're seeing me try a lot of things. And I don't believe in failure necessarily as we relate to it, but I have to try those things to get to where I want to be. So someone's like, well, you know, I created a bunch of images I don't like. I'm like, great. You have to create those to get to the images you like, right? I tried a technique and I didn't like it. Great. That's a process of elimination. And now your voice is starting to emerge from knowing not just what works for you, but what doesn't. So it's just the act of creating. I stay in motion. I keep trying new things. And then I'm going to stumble onto something or work through a problem to an endpoint that feels right and that feels visually compelling. And let's go all the way into profile here, Gerald. So you're going to go all the way over that shoulder, and chin's going to come high. That's great, and we're gonna stay there. And I know I wanna see shadows on this side, so I'm gonna have to push that light in, right? If I don't push that light in, let's take a look at what it's looking like. Brilliant. And that's cool, that's a good start. There's nothing wrong with that, but if I start to move that key in deeper here, and I bring that down just a smidge, we're going to start getting more shadow on this side here. And to me, that's going to be a more intriguing portrait and a more intriguing character study. That. Now we're getting more contrast out of that. And then if I stay here and I up my aperture just a little, and right now I'm exposing for highlights. So whenever I'm setting the settings on my camera, I'm always looking at highlights first. So in this case, I'm looking at these highlights on Gerald's nose and face. I'm going to expose for those. And then if the shadows are too dark, I'm going to take care of them separately. So if I get to the point where the highlights look good, I'm going to anchor that. That's going to stay where it's at. And then I'm going to change my fill. And then we'll fill those shadows with our fill light because I don't want to be changing things globally. So I'm using my aperture to define the highlights. And that's looking really, really nice. I can even play with going up to 7.1 here. Seven one. Change camera. It's not me, it's my camera's fault. It's totally not me. Come on, friend. There we go. You gotta be nice. So you sweet talk the camera, it all starts working. You're having a hard day, I'm having a hard day too. Seth's having a hard day. Amazing. Okay, so we're going to 7.1 now, and we'll look at a little comparison between those two. And so looking at this, I actually like the 6.3 better. So I'm going to go back to 6.3. And once again, everyone, this is personal preference. If you show me a photo and you're like, Johnny, what do you think of this? What do you think of the lighting? I'm going to say, what were you trying to say with the lighting, right? Like, what were you trying to convey with the lighting? And you're like, well, you know, I really like this idea. The person I was photographing is going through a tough time and they're stuck in this place of creative rut. And I'm like, wow, that low-key lighting makes a lot of sense, right? If you're like, oh, they're an esthetician and they wanted something that was really light and bubbly that they could put on Pinterest, I'm like, we might need to alter the ratios a little bit there. So even in terms of what you like or don't like or what works or doesn't work, it all has to do with that intention again. So it comes back to what are we trying to say and do and communicate through our lighting.
Kevin's asking, how long is a photo session usually with you?
I mean, so if you came to me, generally speaking, I don't do anything under 2 hours. I like a half day, if at all possible. I really like a half day, and I sort of have become a photographer's photographer, which I love. So I mainly photograph photographers as clients now. They seek me out, and I either go to them or they come to me, and in those cases, I'll book out an entire day. I'll say, hey, let's do it. We're going to do some more traditional stuff first half of the day. We're going to go out and get lunch. You know, after that, we'll come back. We'll feel a little bit more free form, and then we'll get more expressive. So I tend to shoot for very long periods of time because I want to feel free to explore all of this. And if someone needs a moment or they want to try something different, I don't want to constrict it. I used to do those sessions where I'm like, I'm going to back them all up. I'm going to get 6 in a day. I'm going to do the Costco mentality. And by the end of it, I was energetically exhausted. I was actually making less money, and my clients were kind of like, it was good, but could have been better. So that was a lose, lose, lose for me. I would rather focus on quality over quantity, give someone an experience they can't get anywhere else, and then be able to walk away at the end of the day and say, I did something significant for the person who was in front of my camera. And we are coming up on 8 minutes left here, everyone, which is very unfortunate because I'm having a great time with all of you right now.
You can go over a little bit, but you know.
Oh no,
I'm so much Johnny.
You're only paying me to 6, so I'm out at 6. No, I'm teasing everyone. We could definitely stay.
We got the detox from you.
That's a really great question, and that's something that Seth and I talked about earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn all of these off. So sorry for everyone who's in the stream. I already forgot about doing that. So the question was, how do I make sure that the ambient light is not affecting the exposure? So how do I know that it's not intermingling with the lights that are on the set? We do a test for that. So all that I'm going to do is I'm going to turn all of these lights off. And then we're going to take a look at what this looks like without anything. Now, part of it is just being familiar with the lights. We purposely went to like right around F6 or F8, somewhere around there. And generally speaking, that's going to negate, but it is a good thing just to double check on that. So let me just take a shot here. And now I have all of those lights off. And that's how we know. So in this case, all of the light, it's a perfectly black frame. If there was any bleed, we would see it here. This becomes even more important. Obviously, I'm working with strobes here. If you're an individual who works with constant lights, that's an even bigger consideration, but it's always nice just to have a frame of reference, and then we can build these lights in one at a time. Even in this case, if I was in the studio by myself right now, what I would do, since I was checking that, is I would just take a second to see what each one of these lights is doing, and chin up just a little, Gerald, right there. And so I'm just gonna use that key light again and build these in, so that's just the key light. And that's pretty compelling on its own, I'm not gonna lie, right? So this goes back to that idea that, hey, you can do a lot with one light. So also I want to impress upon all of you out there that if you only have one light, you could do really incredible things with it. You don't need 2 lights, you don't need 6 lights. You can literally use a Home Depot light bounced off a sheet and create world-class photographs. So it's really nice having this great gear and having multiple lights, but it's not necessary to create a significant portrait. So now I'm going to turn that fill light back on. And now that I saw it without the fill light, I'm probably going to turn my fill light down to allow more shadow to come into that scene. So that fill light's coming in now. All right. And actually that looks pretty good. So I don't have the background light on. So now that we've changed into this setup, I actually prefer the way this looks. We're not getting any light onto that backdrop. We're not seeing the depth of the backdrop, but this feels a little bit more classical to me. It's a very almost Caesar-esque pose. The chin is high, he's open, and that would be usually with a window light or something like that. So relative to pose and mood, it makes more sense for me to keep that background light off. That's where it comes back to. This is a constant dance. When I'm changing posing, when I'm changing mood, I'm giving myself a chance to breathe and ask. So thank you for asking that question. And once I assessed it, I'm like, oh, this looks perfect. But then I tried something else. I'm like, wait, that wasn't perfect. This looks perfect now. So it's giving yourself a chance to play and make sure you know what all of your lights are doing as you're making these adjustments throughout. And just for my reference here, I'll bring your chin back to me just a little bit more. And then your eyes are going to come right here to this little signed piece that I signed earlier, because now I've been at Adorama. Thanks, Adorama. Hooray. Okay. And I just want to see what this looks like as chin comes in. And so chin's going to come down just a little. And I'm just looking at the reflection in the glasses, everyone. And I can still see it from the modeling lamp here, so I know I'm going to get it a little bit more. And we're working, and chin's going to come down even a little bit more and a little bit to me, right there. And we won't move from there, Gerald, please. So that's looking really nice. And even just a cinch in more this way with the face. And this is that little back. You're doing great. I'm just working on my light. You look amazing. We're going to keep building you up there. And we're still catching the edge. Before I change anything else here, what I'm going to do is turn my key up, because I like what this light is doing, but obviously we don't have enough light for my taste coming in from the key. So I'm going to bump that from 132 to 116. And then you'll come in even a little bit more here, right there. And that's looking pretty compelling. And then you're going to look right past me. And then I'm going to play into horizontal, and I'm just going to kind of move around here and see what's going on. And once again, this is just play. Now, I preferred the lighting earlier, to be completely honest with you. You look great still here, but for personal preference, I preferred that more. And it's really just a give and take for me, everyone. So we're just trying all of these different things. We're seeing what works the best. We're playing with lighting. We're playing with our ratios. We're turning things on. We're turning things off. And we're doing so in a way where we're not constraining ourselves by expectation. I think that's one of the biggest things that I've had to adjust to get to the point where I'm at in my career now, is I used to expect so much. And I'll tell a super quick anecdote, and then we'll open it up to some questions and things like that. But it was years ago, a friend of mine was really dedicated to getting on the cover of Vogue Italia. That was like their whole goal. Like Vogue Italia and I can die, right? That was their bit. And so they got on the cover of Vogue Arabia, and we were losing it. All of us were literally losing it. We're dancing. I was like popping champagne in Denver. I was doing whatever that is. I don't know. I was just really excited. And all of a sudden I call, and he has this monotone voice. And I'm like, hey, he's like, hey. And I'm like, what's going on? And some of you know where this is going. He's like, hey, and I'm like, you got on the cover of Vogue Arabia. He's like, it's not Vogue Italia. It was a failure. Not only was it not a win, it was a failure. That is the vileness of expectation. Because when we have expectation, we lock ourselves into this. We are so hyper fixated on this narrow piece in front of us that we're missing out on everything in the periphery. And it's the same thing with this. If you have a defined expectation of lighting, of ratios, of style, you're going to walk in and you're going to be hyper fixated on this one thing, and you're going to miss out on so much amazing stuff. So it's allowing yourself to be liberated from the tyranny of expectation so that you can be freed by creative expression. And then you see where that takes you. You see where that takes your art. You see where that takes you and your client. And then when you get into that free flow space, we're in here, we're listening to music we both like. You know, there's a little bit of a dance happening, literally and metaphorically. I'm playing with stuff. I'm like, what do you think? No, I like the shadows better. And these really beautiful things emerge when we give ourselves to the moment, and we create space for that person to participate in the creative process as well. The person who's in front of us. So if I can impress anything upon all of you, it would be to explore more. It would be to embrace failure more, and it would be to take some of the pressure off of yourselves. Just play. That's what I really want for all of you, is to be excited to pick up your camera again, to be excited about the lights, and to not go in and be like, I have to create a branding setup because I'm doing new marketing materials, because I'm going to the Chamber of Converse for Dallas, and I need cards that show this. And it's like, that's great. Do that, but then also get in there and just mess things up. Go like, I'm gonna uplight, I'm gonna downlight, I'm gonna overhead light, I'm gonna add a flashlight, I'm gonna add a phone light, take someone into a bathroom, use candles, you know, hang upside down like a possum and shoot them, like do whatever. Get a little bit experimental and just play and find joy in the process, because that joy for your craft, that joy for your art is going to translate into your images. And if it's not there, you can't Photoshop joy into a photo. You can't Photoshop connection into a photo. There's not AI generative emotion yet. It's close. Right? It's probably happening, but we're not quite there yet. So it's just to embrace the process and embrace yourselves as artists more and just see where that takes you in your art. That's what the biggest thing for me is. So
someone's asking, do you show your model the tether of the screen during the shoot?
it depends on the person, right? So a lot of times, and some of you who are like, oh, Jonny might be a pro, are gonna scoff at this. A lot of times I don't tether at all. I know, bad Jonny, bad Jonny. One of the biggest reasons is I'm so manic. You are seeing the most reserved version of me right now, which might be hard to believe, like quite literally. Normally there's like this gremlin dance going on while I'm shooting. I have destroyed the port in the Sony a7R IV 3 times now. Literally 3 times I've had to send it in from kicking it out. I have the most like crazy setup. I have my L bracket pushed into the cable and then a tether stop, and I usually have another one because I'm just all over the place. So I'll trip, I'll fall, I've knocked my MacBook down. So the first thing is fundamentally, I don't want to damage my gear. The other thing is, for a lot of the people that I photograph, everyone thinks I only photograph models, but I photograph a lot of quote unquote everyday people. The difference is they look like what people perceive as models in the photos because they're confident. So if you saw that person on the street going down, you know, whatever, like 42nd, and they're just like, ugh, and then you saw them in the photo, you wouldn't think it was the same person, right? And now I completely lost my train of thought. But where it goes with the tethering, it came back. It puts me in a position, if I have a screen, I have one of 2 choices if Gerald is here. Now I know Gerald feels confident, right? I have that sense. He's been in front of the camera a lot, but if he hadn't been, if I'm tethering to the screen, I can either have it facing him, in which case he's gonna be deconstructing everything, right? If you've ever been photographed and you can see the photos in real time, you're like, is that what my face looks like? It's kind of like when I hear this video later, I'm gonna be like, Seth, did I really sound like that on set? It's gonna sound like this? Do I sound like lighting,
It's exactly what you sound like.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate you reinforcing that. Anyway, there's that aspect, right? The deconstruction that happens. Now, I can turn that away. I can turn that toward me, but if I turn that toward me, now Gerald's seeing me judging him on the back of a big screen, and I'm just making adjustments there. So I either have to isolate him from the process, or I have to bring him in which case I'm gonna have him connected to a screen instead of to me. So like I do tether, of course, for all of my commercial work. I tether when I'm educating, but more often than not, when I'm in my studio on my own, it's just free form. And then it feels organic and right, and I can come over and be like, Gerald, look at this. He's like, that's me. I'm like, not only is that you, but that's you in the back of my camera. There's something more powerful about seeing the frame on the back of a camera than on a screen, because someone associates the screen with software and with programs and with Photoshop. I'm like, that's you in this moment. It's undeniable proof of how beautiful you are, how magical you are, how powerful you are, how radiant you are, whatever it might be. So that's my personal preference for this type of stuff. Of course, if I'm working with an art director, I have it there so they can be like, the greens aren't quite green enough. And I'm like, all right, we'll make them more green for you, Julian, or whatever. I don't know, I've known a lot of art directors named Julian. It's just a thing.
And they're always under 26 and they lose their job a week later anyway. So it's like, I don't understand.
We were just talking about being jaded. Both of us are jaded. It's fine. So the question was, how much post-processing would I do before actually delivering these? And I would say probably not a lot. So if I go back to one of these photos, I can quickly work through something. I like we had this conversation earlier. I really try and keep things as solid in camera as I can possibly get. So like what I'll do a lot of times, I'll lower contrast, I'll play with the tones, I'll play with the color temp a little. Now that the AI retouching tools are in Capture One, it makes my life a lot easier. So I'm rarely leaving Capture One anymore. Before, I might go into Photoshop and do a little bit of dodge and burn, a little bit of skin cleanup and things like that. But the Capture One tools approximate my process so closely that I can go in there, play with the sliders a little bit, keep it looking natural, do some cleanup, play with the highlights. Then obviously I'm just copying and pasting that to a gallery. And so I could have these done, let's say a set of 10 for Gerald in 30 minutes, and they're deliverable. And then of course, if he has any additional retouching requests, he's like, hey, you know, can you just add a little speck here into my beard, or that was out of, your beard looks perfect. But like if there was anything going on with that, you know, I could address that in tow. But especially for doing things like client reveals now and stuff like that, even in the AI retouching tools in Capture One, if those of you who aren't familiar with it, you can use that when tethering too. So you can actually make AI adjustments. Let's say your client's like, hey, and this happened to me earlier because I'm wearing hats all the time. I had this giant pimple on my head that was like the size of a baby's hand, you know? And I'm just like, I would want to do something with that. So if Seth was photographing me, he could just set that to remove the blemish, and then every photo that I see on the back of that screen, if I'm seeing them in real time, I'm not having to look at that pimple on my face. So whatever it might be, but I try and stay as hands-off as possible with that. And I sort of operate on this bit about authenticity. Seth and I had a chat about something being more documentarian in nature. Obviously, it's smoke and mirrors with the lighting, the styling, the posing, the focal lengths, the aperture, all of that. But beyond that, I want to try and represent Gerald as accurately as possible. And when someone sees that photo, I want them to go like, oh, that's Gerald, not like, oh, that's a more posh, more professional, more polished person who kind of looks like Gerald. He's already enough of those things. But just so I'm not allowing people to go out there and catfish and stuff like that, I don't want to contribute to common catfish syndrome. So we're going to keep things a little bit more real and a little bit less plastic, more than less. So yeah. And does anyone else in the chat have any questions, or do any of you have any questions or thoughts or anything else? I either did a really good job or a really bad job. Either way, I'm comfortable with it. But no, like, this has been fantastic, everyone. So going back to it, there's so much more that we could go into this. There were infinite variations that we could do with this setup. We could have even changed this. You know, we could have brought a background light in. We could have used that beauty dish that's in the back as a key. That would have been a harder light source, you know, more specular light source. But it's really just about play. Take the tools that you currently have, see what you can do with them. You know, even with modifiers, it's like take the grid off, take the inner baffle off, take the outer baffle off, take all the baffles off and just shoot without any diffusion at all. Give yourself a chance to see what light does in different scenarios. Seth and I had that talk earlier, and I'm like, the one thing for me that's like creative freedom is I know no matter what gear I have, put me in any space with any light, with any camera, with any lens, with any person, I'm gonna create a great portrait. Now, I might not be able to create that portrait to spec, right? Because if you're like, well, create a 3-point lighting setup, I'm like, I only have one light, I can't do that. But I know I can create a beautiful portrait in any set and scene, and that's because I know how to see light, I know how to shape light, and I know how to work with my subject and my camera and my gear relative to that. So, please. I do, yeah. So I work with continuous lighting a lot as well, especially when I'm teaching. You know, so it's a little bit easier sometimes to see some of those fundamental principles. There's a time and a place for each one of these tools. So if I wanted to capture motion, or if I was working with the designer and I needed to be shooting at f11 to show all of the tooth in the fabric, I'm gonna reach for my strobes right away, right? Because you're not gonna wanna put the power out in a continuous to shoot at something like f11 and ISO 100. His beard would have melted off. That wouldn't be good for anyone. So that's not an ideal scenario. So it just depends on the client, you know, it depends on the situation and that type of thing. I've been doing a lot more location work outdoors recently and everywhere else, and I'm always reaching for my strobes for that. And it also depends on someone's comfort. Sometimes it is easier to work with continuous if someone's not comfortable in front of the camera because you don't have that flash effect sort of happening. But it's a case-by-case basis. And we have to remember that ultimately light is light. So even if these were all continuous lights, we would have set up the same things. If we would have metered it, our ratios would be the exact same. We would just work into that process a little bit differently. But over, you know, beyond anything else, same modifier, same position, same light, same shadow. Yeah. I don't.
All right, last question. How do you work with an insecure person?
No, I was going to say trepidatiously. No, I was just joking. And so, I mean, I think in that way, like I just meet them where they're at. I think that's one of the biggest things, right? If someone comes in and they're like, hey, you know what? I hate being photographed. I would be like, you know, for a long time, so did I. I'm looking for some sort of bridge there, or so do a lot of the people who come in. Like, I don't want to diminish the person and what they're experiencing, but I want them to know they're not alone in that feeling, because most of us feel that way. So it's like, I'm not going to try and fix it. And I would just say, hey, you're uncomfortable right now. Let's take a few frames. After those frames, if you need to take a break or breath, we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm not going to try and fix the problem. I'm not going to try and be a therapist to the person. I'm just going to say, hey, yeah, I get that. It is being in here, being in the studio, being in front of people. Like, it's nerve-wracking. But I really believe that if you give this a chance and if you trust me, we're going to get to the point where you're less nervous, you're more excited, and I know that we're going to create some really incredible images of you. And we'll get there, but just be with me through this process and I'll hold my hand with you through that. So it's just allowing someone to feel comfortable and to feel seen in that. And especially if someone vocalizes that to me, we're already in a good place, right? Because if someone just simply says out loud, I don't know if any of you suffer with anxiety. I feel like all of us do in today's world, but like sometimes it's just so nice to be like, I'm anxious. Like if I say that out loud, literally, if I'm talking to a friend and I'm like, hey, you know, this is about to start, I'm anxious, and I feel fine. It's simply vocalizing that. So if someone shares that with me, I know they're already getting to a good place. But yeah, it's just meeting people where they're at. And we're all human. We all struggle. We all deal with good and bad days, good and bad times. We all have body image issues. We all think of ourselves in ways other people don't. We all look at our work in ways that no one else does. If Seth and I took the exact same photo of Gerald today, you know, and I'm looking at Seth's photo, I'd be like, wow, dude, that's really good. I'm like, despite all of our differences, you know, I'm not from Brooklyn, but like still I can appreciate your work.
What differences? What do you want? What are you trying to start here?
What I'm trying to say is that if I looked at that and I looked at but I took the same photo, right? I would look at it and go, oh, I don't know. Maybe I should have shot that at 2.8 instead of 5.6. Maybe I could have added a hair light. I would be deconstructing every pixel of it. But for Seth, I could just appreciate it for what it was. So I think it's just understanding that ultimately we're all on the same journey. And, you know, sometimes someone just needs someone to be there to hear it. And then just say, hey, let's just see where this goes.
If you're not looking at your own work critically, you're not growing.
This is also
Period.
true. Absolutely. And that's a fine line, right? So you have to look at it critically enough where you can identify areas where you can build up, but not so much where you're just like, my work is terrible, I'm terrible, I need to sell off my gear so that I can go to Costa Rica and live with sloths, although that is pretty cool.
I'm down.
I know, actually, I'm like, actually, everyone, this is it. This is the last time Johnny's going to teach. You can find me on the beach with the beard, hanging out with sloths. That's
going to rent out jet skis to rich people and hunt sloths all day.
Exactly.
Down. Let's do this.
No, I mean, this has been great. So thank you all so much for those of you who came here to learn from me today. Thank you, Gerald, so much for being here. Seth, thank you for holding down the fort on the tech and dealing with my BS. Adorama, Printique, Flashpoint, thank you so much for giving me the tools and the space. All of you who decided to join the stream, you could have been doom scrolling on TikTok, but instead you're here with us, so thank you for doing that. Anytime I have an opportunity to do this, it's still surreal for me. It really is. It's such a beautiful thing to know that I'm creating work that resonates with people and that you would want to know what my process was. Like, it's really wild. This past weekend, I taught with Lindsay Adler at her studio in Jersey City, and it was this watershed moment for me. Right? I've been working toward this for the past decade of my life, obsessively, sacrificially. I've given up so much. I've grinded harder than anyone else that I know. And so to see the fruition of that and to have all of you just wanting to spend an afternoon in the city when it's hot AF out there, you know, especially for those of you who took the subway and you sweated to be here with me, to spend a little bit of time for me and deal with my craziness, I seriously cannot express how much it means to me. And I love you all so much and I appreciate you all so much. And I want you to show yourself some love. So if you could do me one favor, person to person, human to human, artist to artist, love on yourself a little, create some art for you, allow yourself to explore and realize how incredible that you are so that you can then pass that along to another person and give them the torch so that they can realize how incredible they are. And that's the power that we have as photographers. And I think it's really important that we own that because we get to embody the change that we want to see in the world and we get to heal and elevate and lift up and celebrate people. And that's an honorific that I hold very dear. And it's a sacred thing to me. And I hope it is to you too. So love y'all. Thank you so much for being here. See you again. Ciao.
Hughes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody who physically showed up and everybody who's digitally showing up because as science tells us, it is 100% easier not to do things than it is to do things. And so you guys are doing a thing. Congratulations. My name is Gary. I am a headshot and portrait photographer from Orlando, Florida. And this is hopefully my first time speaking live at Adorama without anything breaking, which will be really great. Because you could go back into the archives to my first time here, the day Seth Miranda, AKA Last Witness, and I met. And how many, we went through tether cables and triggers.
My man went through 3 full-on straight-up cameras, 5 cables. We almost swapped laptops, and yet he came through. He got shots delivered, and that
Who was that? 6 or 7 years ago, and people still come up to me and be like, I saw that thing on Adorama, man, and whew, that looked like you were tap dancing up there, and I was.
For those of you online that are wondering, it's on the main channel if you guys want to search Gary Hughes on Adorama TV.
Don't want to miss that. If you want to watch a grown man trying his hardest, that's the place to do it.
If you want to watch a grown man sweat through 4 shirts that were layered.
Well, I'm sweating through shirts today. I didn't mean to come from Florida to Florida, but hey, and special thanks to Adorama and everybody who worked to get me here and my friends at Fujifilm and Flashpoint. And what's cool when I come to Adorama, I don't have to bring anything because they already have all the gear that I actually use in my studio. So that's pretty cool. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to give you like just a couple of minutes on my process. Then I'm going to show you the process live, and I think that's important. The reason I think that this course is important, not because I think that you should try to cram yourself into the smallest space possible to create portraits, is because that's what happens to me all the time. My first studio was an 8x12 room. I remember I've done so many portrait assignments for clients where they put me in a place that was difficult to shoot in and you have to think your way around it. So these are just a couple of practical ideas that sometimes you just really got a small space to do your very best. And hopefully you'll use some of that in moving forward, but I would never wish a small space upon you. I wish you only 3,000 square foot places with 20-foot ceilings and a perfect cyc wall all the way around and large modifiers and plenty of assistance, but mostly the rest of it's work in the real world. So here we go. All right, so let's get started. If just a little background, I'll give you just sort of my the type of work that I do. I do professional headshots. By and large, it's about 90% of my business. I photograph individuals for billboards and bus ads and stuff like that. And then sometimes I get to photograph cool creative professionals, tattoo artists, musicians. But out of the 9,000 people we photographed in my studio last year, The vast majority of those were LinkedIn headshots or email signatures shot at a convention en masse, shooting at least 150 people a day. And we do that for companies from all over the world, from like Uber to IBM to, you know, to billion dollar brands you've never heard of. I just do LinkedIn headshots basically for a living. So I am in the trenches all the time. I don't just travel the world to exotic places like Seth's camera room. Yeah. But this is what I do. I photograph individuals and I photograph a lot of volume. So a lot of what I've learned comes from cutting my teeth in the most difficult possible situations, and I'm doing it with the least expensive gear I can find that I don't mind breaking, and I do that all the time. And I also travel a ton, and when I travel a ton, I love to take pictures. It's how I enjoy the world. Having my cameras, I have 2 cameras I travel with, and that's my Fujifilm X100VI and my Fujifilm X1/2, and those are my anxiety medication for I'm one of those people that maybe like you, I don't know what to do with my hands. I don't know how to relax in social situations. And so I just take lots and lots of pictures of my kids and my wife and the places that we travel. And so I like to do photography as my job, but I do photography for fun, but in a completely different way. High stress, lots of people, low stress, shooting JPEG, don't even care if I ever use the images for anything because it's just basically to keep me from having a panic attack. All right, let's move on. I think I've broken down how I approach taking powerful portraits. I only take pictures of people for their job in my studio. I don't do babies in buckets, couches in fields. I don't do weddings. I don't hang things from trees. I take pictures of people who want great photos in the shortest amount of time possible. So I want to break down just kind of like the elements that I think I need to include in my images, and then the levers I use to get those. So to start with, I think that great portraitists use dimension. That's taking a 2-dimensional medium and making it appear more 3-dimensional. I think that creates more powerful images. And honestly, I think that's the number one thing that photographers, when they're first starting out, don't get, is that we are working in a 2-dimensional abstract medium and you're trying to make it seem more real. And the best way to do that, I believe, is using dimension. Second is composition. I think that is another thing down the journey. You learn how to push the buttons on your camera. You might learn how to use an off-camera light and create dimension. But to tell part of the story by how you compose the image instead of just taking a picture. I think a lot of thought in composition creates more powerful images. Expression, I think, is so subjective, but when you're working with other people, how they view the expression is the most important thing. How they felt when you took the image is really important. Somebody can look at an expression. You ever post an image in a Facebook group for photographers? It's the worst, right? Like, we're the worst. like, oh, he looks grumpy. It's like, oh, I actually thought he looked kind of pensive and powerful. No, he's grumpy. Like, expression is so subjective. But it's about the person in the image, about how they feel and how it makes you feel when you look at it. And expression is a thing that goes beyond just having a technically great image. It's a thing that makes an image connect with a viewer. I also think that whenever possible, the number one thing that elevates a portrait is story. If there's some kind of story in an image, or you can interpret something in an image, it takes it beyond just a picture. I think the best quote I ever heard was, a portrait isn't a picture of somebody, it's a picture about somebody. And I think that just sticks with me. I didn't invent that. That's just something I heard that I thought was really cool. If you stop taking pictures of people and start taking pictures about people, I think your work is going to get better, or at least set that intention. And then, obviously, if Pete Coco was still here, buddy, if you're watching, this one's for you. I always used to say that it doesn't matter how good you are as long as you can sell it. But I also believe it hits a point where your work becomes so good technically that even muggles can tell the difference, right? And we tell we're wizards, non-photographers are muggles, right? Most of the time they can't tell the difference between pretty good and good, good and great, etc. But if your work is so good, even non-photographers stop and go, wow, that's incredible. So that's the thing that I aspire to that I don't always hit. I promise you, 9 out of 10 pictures I take are probably bad. Maybe even more, maybe 99 out of 100. So to create dimension, we use lighting. Masters of light and shadow, knowing when to add light and when to take light away. And that's one of the things we're going to show you today. You want to also have intent in your images. I think the thing that takes a good photographer to a great photographer is seeing the image you're going to take before you pick up the camera. Picking up the camera should be the last thing that you do. Let me put it this way. You shouldn't be surprised at the back of your camera, right? You should never go, oh man, like you should ideally know what lighting ratio you're trying to create, what expression you're going for, how you're going to compose the image. The less often you are surprised by your camera, the better a photographer you are becoming. In case you couldn't tell, that would be like the litmus test. I think that a great portraitist is an empath, someone who has empathy. They listen to people, they observe people. Not all good ideas, not all creative things are ours. I think photographers, we can be selfish creators. Like I was talking about, I take pictures because of my anxiety. When I'm taking a picture for someone else, that's not for me, it's about them. And the more you do that, I think the better you are, the more you can tell a story, the more you can bring something out in them. I think one of the best things that you get when you photograph someone is they go, that looks like me, or that feels like me, or that's my expression, that's something that I do. And so if I photograph somebody for an hour, I usually spend about 20 minutes just talking to them, and I just look at their face. I watch how they sit when they relax, how they lean on things, how they emote, what their real smile looks like. And you go into a session like that arms. Now, we don't always have time to do that. But the point is, have in your head to be observant, have empathy, and I think it'll make you a better portraitist. And then I think attention to detail is something that can be lost in our digital world. I think you can just go, well, oh, that white background, I'll just make it white in post. Or, oh, I'll just add this and I'll fix that and I'll tweak that. And that is true, and it saved my butt 1,000 times, just like it's probably saved yours. But the more I try to not to have to do that, the better my work gets. And as a professional photographer, the less time I spend on the computer, the more money I get to keep. You know what I mean? The more time I get with my kids. My goal is to have coffee with my wife every morning and dinner with my kids every night. Now, I'm not doing that tonight thanks to you guys. I'm here with you. Thanks for taking me away from my kids. No, so I think that attention to detail, the more you do that, the more you slow down, take fewer photos and add more detail. Today, on this Fujifilm photo walk we did, I think I almost caused the model to have a heart attack because I asked him to put the clasp to his necklace in back before I took the photo. Could I have fixed that in post-production? 1,000%. But not only do I not now have to do that, but that person also thinks I'm paying attention. You ever have that? Like, oh, that's real. You must be really good at your job for that. Like, they think you're a better photographer because of that? They might. They're muggles. They have no idea what they're doing. All right. And finally, they have no clue. Practicing your craft. Now, my wife's favorite band is Less Than Jake. Anybody familiar with this band, Less Than Jake? They're like, since she was 14 years old, her favorite bands. Like, it's a ska act. They're great. They're a lot of fun. We've seen them, I don't know, 100. I've seen them 100 times. She's seen them 10,000 times. Anytime they come within 100 miles, she goes. I believe that they're a band. They give me the impression, and if anybody from Less Than Jake happens to see this, we love you. I've spent so much money on your merch and at your shows. But you get the impression that they all live far away from each other because, like, they don't practice together a lot. So at the beginning of a tour, they're not quite as tight as if you see them play at the end of a tour when they've been on the road playing together. Practice is really obvious, and it makes those things so you don't have to think about them. When you have those problems like, oh, your equipment dying, you know what to do. Your Rolodex of ideas, of things, ways to solve problems in a situation gets deeper and deeper the more you practice. And I think that's something that I'm guilty of. When you get busy as a photographer, your life gets busy, you don't. You don't play, you don't practice. So I think all of these things are not always qualities that I exhibit, but qualities that I see great photographers exhibit that I aspire to. So I'm not saying I have all these things. I just kind of recognize they're good. You know how, like, when you think about jogging, but you don't, but it makes you feel good that you thought about jogging? Like, that's it. That's basically it. This is what I do. Okay. So now I'm going to give you... All right. So here's my process when I'm creating portraits, okay? Most of the time, people are coming in for a specific thing. I need a headshot for my LinkedIn photo. I need a business card. I need a picture for this billboard. Number one thing I always do is I shoot the commission first. What did they hire me for? And I do that get that out of the way. Normally that stuff is like, You could train a clever chimpanzee to do the most of the commission work that I do. It's really not that difficult, but I get it out of the way first because I believe in not wasting people's time. And then once I do that, my favorite thing to ask somebody in the studio is, do you have a couple of minutes? Because I'd like to do something else. And usually they're like, well, shoot, I'm dressed, why not? And so they almost always say yes. Then I'm going to look at them, I'm going to analyze them, and I'm going to dig deep to try and find something that's going to be more interesting. And in this case, what am I trying to show about them that's unique or interesting? What story is there to tell? Then I'm going to go ahead and set up that idea. I'm going to take a test shot. I'm going to make sure my lighting is all together. And once my lighting is all together, I'll make any adjustments I need to make. I measure everything with a light meter that I've got around here somewhere. I shoot a color target. I make sure that everything is exactly how I want it for the most part, because when I say go to my subject, we are now taking the real thing, then I'm all about them. I don't want to be fussing with lights or fussing with anything in between shots. I'm going to think about the shot, create it in my head, create it physically with the things I have available, and then I'm going to give all of my emotional energy to the person that's sitting in front of me. Because I see photographers do this all the time. You shoot and you look, and you shoot and you look, and then you adjust, and then you shoot. Like half your session is just messing around with your crap in between when you've got a living, breathing person like beautiful Gerald over here, who I've ignored completely so far. We're going to do it, man. All right. So I hope that makes sense. I think it's very important to test, make your adjustments, and then you engage the person in front of you. You're going to get much better results. And I'm not talking about cheesy jokes necessarily, although I've got quite a few of those. Yeah, thanks, Seth. And I'm talking about just giving them your energy and attention, and stop giving your attention to the technical parts of your job that you should already have handled. So I think if you're ever working on a commercial set with like a photographer shooting a big commercial job, your subject is a celebrity. They don't walk in there and stand around while you adjust your lights. You've completely tested that whole setup on all your interns before that person even walks on, and they're on set for 5 minutes. Treat every client that way. Do not waste their time. Treat them like the person you are the most interested in being with and talking to. And I think that you're going to get better results out of them and probably make more money too. And then once you have them engaged, that's when you push the shutter. That's when you execute. The execution is really important. Engage them and then grab it when you're getting that emotional response. Does that all sound pretty good? All right, let's go ahead and do it in real life then. For real life.
Absy's saying, Carol, Deanne, say hello.
Hey, Carol. Hey, Ab. I'm going down to see them at the Bouquet Academy Summit in a week or so down in hot Atlanta. All right. All right, Gerald. Are you ready? Yeah. Okay. The first thing we're going to do is shoot the commission, right? So Gerald and I have discussed this ahead of time. Gerald is he's an actuary. I thought that sounded interesting. I don't know what that is. Is it sort of like an accountant? Gerald is an actuary. And we're going to take, even though Gerald dresses not like an actuary, there we go. Seth, if this falls down, oh, it's good. See, Seth set this up, by the way. He set up the C-stand. It should be fine. Better check it. Okay. So let's go through the live process here real quick. And there we go. So what I've got here is this is a Flashpoint 400, I think, as my main light. And I've got a 8200 Explorer Evolve 200 Pro as that. And then I've got my little soda can light. That's the Explorer 100 Pro. So I've got 3 lights. What we're going to do right now is we're going to build this setup one light at a time. There we go. Mode. I'm turning these off. I don't need a modeling light. No, modeling lights are amazing, but I've been photographing in like boardrooms at noon for so many years. My brain doesn't even see them. I'm one of these people who's like incredibly surprised by how useful constant lighting is. You know, like, oh my God, you see what you get. Oh, it's great. But I just never turned on a modeling light because they just don't work on a trade show floor, you know, which is where I do 90% of my photos. Okay, so what I've got here is I'm measuring this to be at f4. So when I photograph a person for like a business portrait, I typically do it at f5.6 or f8. I'm shooting with the Fujifilm X-H2, which is an APS-C sensor camera. Long story short, 5.6 gives you the equivalent depth of field of f8. So, but I'm going to shoot this at f5.6. For those of you settings nerds out there, that's ISO 250, 1/125th of a second, and we've got 5.6 is what my main light is reading. So we're going to build this one light at a time. All right, Gerald, I want you to pretend to be really boring. I know. All right, probably bring that down a little bit. Did you move my light set? Did you just turn my modeling light on set? All right, so when I'm photographing a, we good? I think we're good. Yeah. So let's do that first. Yep, so this is going to be our blank slate here. Okay, that's pretty good. So what I'm doing is I'm photographing everything without the flash to see how much ambient light is going to be affecting the final exposure. In this case, I think you can see it at him a tiny, tiny bit, but as my mama would say, that's near enough, it makes no difference. All right, there we go. Yeah. So now we're all right. So now we're just going to do a quick test. Okay, so this is one light. And as you can see, I've got a pretty good lighting ratio. The exposure's bang on. And when you do use a light meter to do your exposure, I think one of the things that you'll find is that it may end up actually looking a little bit underexposed to what you're used to seeing. And there's a reason for that. Because LCD screens are so cool, but they're liars. They're lying liars. And they want it to look bright and beautiful and colorful for you. And your brain's a liar, and your brain's used to that. So it is almost always better to use this as how much light is actually falling on your subject. And so we've got that covered. The idea is I don't want to blow out any highlights. I don't want shadows to block up. I want all my pixels to be preserved and ready to rock and roll. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another light. Because what do we say? We're going to create dimension, right? So let's add, this is going to be a 1x3 strip light, and this has a grid on it. And if you're not familiar with a honeycomb grid like this, essentially it narrows the throw of light so that it's not spilling all over the place. An incredibly useful thing in small spaces is if you have a small space that you find yourself working in from time to time, and you bust out that 75-inch umbrella to take that headshot, and you're like, why can't I control the light? Just get a smaller light. You'll be all right. And that's one of the reasons I like a big modifier, and I've been made fun of a lot. Like I'm minimum 56 inches or bigger for like a headshot because I just like how soft it is and how forgiving it is. But when you're in a small space, that smaller light source gives you much better control over how you're carving your subject out of the darkness, which is essentially what we're doing. So now I'm going to add this. Yeah, and we got an online question or an in-studio question?
So someone in the chat's asking, what head are you using on that 200 Pro and the strip light? Because there's so much.
Oh, right. So the question is, in the AD200 Pro, has you can swap the head out to a Fresnel head, to a bare bulb. It's even got now like a weird like LED modeling light cool attachment. They're very, very versatile. Probably the best pocket strobe on the planet. But I just use a Fresnel head because I break stuff a lot. I've gone through a lot of those bare bulbs because I'm a very clumsy person. So I mostly just shoot with a Fresnel head on it. I would do this. Go to your home or studio or wherever you like to shoot. Set up, take 50 pictures with a Fresnel head and then 50 pictures with the bare bulb shooting through a softbox. And then if you can line up which is which, I'll buy you lunch next time I see you, if you can tell the difference. So that's, I think... Unless you're using them bare, you're not going to be able to tell the difference. A bare bulb's best is when it's not in any kind of modifier. You can light up a whole room with it. It's kind of amazing. All right, so now we're going to add this second light for Gerald, and then bam. Okay, so now you can see that we've started to get a little bit of separation on the side of him. I think that you got to carve your subject out of the background. So right now we're already using 3 different kinds of lights. I've got my main light. I've got this beautiful white piece of foam core here as a reflector that's acting as our fill light. And now I've got an edge light that creates separation. Now you want to always be able to tell where your subject ends and the background begins. Leslie.
What's your main light? The shelf life?
This is a 36-inch Parasnap, Glow Parasnap stop up. This is my whole kit, man. Like, I have all of these. I replaced my whole, as soon as these came out, and they fold completely flat. So all of my location gear is predicated upon will it fit in this one particular bag that I own. So I keep buying smaller stuff to fit more things in that bag. All right, and now the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add this little soda can light on the back here, just to give us a little gradient on the background. And I'm gonna sit. Gerald, is it okay if I sit? All right, man. All right, so now everything's tested and ready to go. Actually, we need to do one last test. Here we go. Okay, you look like a very good actuary. All right, so let's put those up side by side real quick, and so you can see the difference between three. Okay, so the first image on the left, that's gonna be, I think, all three lights working together. This image is gonna be 2 lights with no light on the background, or 2 lights with no light on the background, and that is just the 1 light. 1 light, 2 light, 3 light. Now, I typically use stuff in a way that's pretty subtle. So if you're doing the math, if my main light is metering at f5.6, most of the time I will use edge lights or any light that's on the subject from any other angle. I'll start at 2 stops below the main light, sometimes 3. So that would mean that light, I would like that at f2 or f2.8. I want it to be there doing a job, but I don't want it to look like a promo for Dancing with the Stars. I just don't want it to be overlit from behind. You're adding dimension, filling in some of those dark pixels while still keeping the shape of the light. Little gradient on the background, we're ready to go. So now everything's tested, and we're gonna shoot the commission, and we're gonna talk to our subject. So since you have the most boring job in the world, we wanna make you look like the nicest man in the world, right? So I'm gonna coach you through a couple different expressions, and then we'll move on to something else. All right. Yeah, hey, let's hit the question, Seth.
Brad's asking, does glare on glasses bother you?
Does that, Brad McMillan wants to know if glare on glasses bothers me. That's a great question, Brad. The answer is it bothers everyone. It bothers literally everyone on Earth. Like, yeah. So, but I'm going to show you how I deal with it. So that's great that you notice it. I'm not so concerned about it because these are my test shots, but I will deal with that glare when the time comes. All right, let's ready to rock and roll. Now, Brad, if you would stop bothering me so I can pay attention to Gerald, please. All right. I got to go through the process. The snoot. Oh, yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. All right, Gerald, are you ready? You have all my attention now. Yeah. Okay. So when I'm posing somebody, I pose them from the bottom up. I start at the bottom. If everything's good down here, everything will be better up here. So his bottom right now is his bottom. So let's rock and roll. All right, Gerald, a little up straight and keep your shoulders loose. When you get people straight, it tips their head back, right? And people do that kind of, they get good posture, but now they're like this. So you have to figure out how to get them like this without doing this. And so mostly the trick that I use, everybody knows this trick who's watched YouTube, is you want them to bring their face to you. But how do you get them to do that without like doing weird shoulder stuff, you know? I don't know, you want a turtle? You want a chicken? Like, I work with a lot of actors. So I like to give people a scene instead of physical direction whenever possible. And so in this case, Gerald, I want you to do this. Can you lean in like I'm talking too quiet? Like this? Yeah, like, yeah, perfect. There you go. And now tilt your head a little this way. Lips gently together. Bring your chin down a little. There it is. And now what I want you to do, keeping those lips gently together, is let a small smile start to creep into the corners of your mouth. No teeth though, but keep those lips pressed gently together, and then chin down. Tilt this way a little bit. There we go. Boom. All right. Now a little more smile. I need 8%. There it is. Tilt a little bit that way. And now lips together, pushing into the corners of that. Let it crinkle the bottoms of your eyes and the corners of your mouth at the same time. There we go. Beautiful. Now I need a little bit less resting bouncer face, if you could do that. Beautiful. All right. You know that thing we do when you're laughing with a group of people and everybody has a good belly laugh, and then you go like, ah. That thing, like, remember that laugh we had 10 seconds ago? That one. Okay, tilt this way a little bit. Okay, good. And chin down a little bit, Gerald. And now lips together. Give me that same energy, but no teeth. Love that. Perfect. All right. You have a hard time not looking like a sexy model. I think that's the problem. Perfect. All right. And now what I want you to do is turn your feet this way. Now, I had this conversation with Gerald before, and I'm going to give you this your brain hates it when your face and your chest are pointed in different directions. So when you do a pose like this, somebody's going to drift back over and over and over again. Your brain does not like this, but it's a cool, effective way to pose people when the face and the body are in facing opposite directions. So come back a little bit, Gerald, if you would, to me. Just a touch. There you go. So I want you to sit up tall, relax your wrists just here on the tops of your thighs. And I want you to lean on your right hip. There you go. And now I want you to bring your chin forward, bring it down, turn your head this way. There you go. And then lips gently together. And now you're a men's divorce attorney. That's your motivation. Chin down just a little bit. See, now you're nicer than you were when you were the actuary. There you go. Perfect. There it is. All right. Now chin up just a little and then down a little. You see how that glare comes and goes? There you go. And now turn your head a little this way. There it is. And we're going to broad light Gerald, which means that I'm shooting into the lit side of the face, into the shadow side of the face, which is something that I do a lot when I'm getting glare on the glasses, especially in a volume situation. I don't have time to move everything. Tilt this way a little bit. Lean into me, talking too quiet. There you go. Lips together. Right there. Okay. All right. The men's divorce attorney for all of New Jersey. All right. Turn your head to the left a tiny bit. There we go. That's right. $99 divorces with Gerald. There we go. Good. That's what I needed. Okay. Perfection. All right, let's take a look at those. Thanks, Gerald. Oh, am I still on? Audio still good?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. No, it's a Samson. Audio joke. Never mind.
We use Sennheiser mics here. Thanks, Sennheiser, for hooking up the event.
We'd like to thank our sponsor, Sennheiser microphones. All right, cool. All right. Yeah, let's take a look at some of these. Okay, great. You got me, buddy? All right. So let's take a look through some of these. I think that what we've got here is going to cover that commission pretty well. Got some variety of expression, got separation from the background, got nice light in the eyes, and we're able to pretty much avoid all the glare on glasses. So this is a question I get every time I've ever taught a seminar on lighting. Somebody pops into the chat and goes, what do you do with glasses? Well, it's less of a problem than it used to be. I was doing this 18, 20 years ago when everybody had readers from CVS, and it was a lot harder at the time. So now anti-glare glasses do a pretty good job for the most part. But even when they don't, here's the last time I will ever address this. If you ever ask this question again, I'm just going to give you a link to this video. What you're trying to do to avoid getting reflections of your lights and reflectors in glasses is you need to create as large an alleyway as possible between the two lighting modifiers. The further away that these two things are from each other, the more room you will have to move Gerald's head around without getting a reflection of one or the other in the glasses. Now, some glasses are better than others, and in some cases you may not want to do that because it also changes the quality of the light when you move your modifiers around. But if you're in a situation where you have no choice, basic, easy thing to do is get your lights a lot further away from the person. Make a wider alleyway between these two things, and you'll find it a lot easier to photograph people without getting those reflections in there. Okay, that's it. We never have to talk about this again. Seth, you got a question?
Yeah.
If it's about glasses, I am out of here.
Don't worry, guys. I'll keep covering glasses every time I'm live. Brad is asking, what do you do when your subject isn't so interesting?
That's a fair question. And Brad, you know what? My man, I'm telling you, I say every time, I was like, whenever I speak at conferences and stuff, I'm like, can you give me a model that looks like a normal person? And they still give me someone who's impossibly good looking every time. Because like it's expensive equipment, great looking person. What are you gonna do? But among you guys out there, decide amongst yourselves who's the ugliest, and I'll photograph that person right now and make them look good. Dude, you look amazing. I'll make you look so good. I think, again, that's where empathy comes in too. It's like, I think it's all relative because Gerald could be walking down the street and there could be people going like, good Lord, I must know this man. Who is he? And then there are other people that would be like, not into him at all. So it is subjective. But what I do is I look at the person, I listen to the person, I try to find the angle that flatters them the most. I look at their face, which way does their nose point? Is one of their eyes more apparent than the other? What's the angle of their face down the center? Do they have a weird scar from a knife fight when they were a kid? I don't know. Like, I'm trying to look at them. And honestly, one of the things that I do the most, Brad, is I ask people, Is there a side of your face you like better? Is there something about your face that worries you in photos? Is there anything that you think about that stresses you out when you're going to have your photo taken? And as long as you're kind, you'd be shocked by what people tell you. They will tell you, they'll go right to the mole. They'll be like, mole, 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 or whatever it is that's on their face that bothers them. They'll be like, I have a chipped tooth on this side and I don't have enough money to get a veneer or whatever it is. Like, they'll tell you these things. Just ask, listen, and then do something about it. That's what I do. I photograph mostly ugly people, Brad, I'm going to be honest.
Yeah.
And everybody I photograph is beautiful and they look incredible. All right, so what I'm going to do now is we're going to try to get a little more interesting with our photo. Okay, so the commission is done. And now we're going to create something a little more interesting. So here's what I'm going to do. The first thing is I'm adding a grid to this light. And what that's going to do is going to immediately make this light a little less of a spread. It's going to narrow it. It's going to be a little more precise, a little more like a scalpel. You know, a lot of times when you're shooting kind of a basic headshot, you want that light bouncing around into all the things just because more soft light makes people look better. In this case, Gerald's got the bone structure and the look where I could do something like a little less soft and he's still going to look great. As photographers, you shouldn't always be scared of harsh light, you know? And so I think that that's what we're going to do to start with. And again, we're in this small space, and I'm shooting with the Fujinon 16-55, which is essentially a 24-70 on a full frame equivalent for those of you that are full frame shooters. And we have to remeasure, actually, Gerald, because as we all know, the grid reduces the power output of the light, right? Is that what you were going to say? I just wanted you to feel like you were part of it, man. You know? All right.
No, I'm learning.
I'm always educating myself too, like where I'm educating myself that I should have worn more deodorant because I am sweating so much. Thanks, New York, for being hot and stuff. All right.
You're from Florida,
Dude.
Like, thanks, New York.
You keep pointing that out like I'm not aware that I'm from Florida. All right.
My man walked in here. It's like, this is like January where I'm from.
It is. All right. Doesn't mean it's not hot there too. All right. 3, 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this so I get a little more dramatic, shallow depth of field. And so in this case, we're going to shoot at f2.8. So I'm going to open that up a little bit and adding the grid onto that. We're going to get some ambient in there, Seth said, except I dropped the ISO down to 125 instead of 320. So we'll see how it goes. You want to do a blank slate test? All right, let's do it. Okay, about the same. Yep, so we're pretty good. All right, so this is one light. To start with, Gerald, why don't you face me dead straight on, put your feet on the ground. Now, one of the things I like to do that I think lends people a lot of power is I think that I want Gerald to have power and presence in this image. So I'm going to take a slightly lower angle and a slightly wider lens choice to sort of exaggerate the proportions. And I think that kind of makes stuff look a little cool, a little cooler, a little different. All right, so let's see what we got here. This is our one light test. Gerald, if you'd lift your chin this way into that light a little bit, so tilt. Yep, that's where I need you. Good. All right, so let's see what that looks like. We're getting there, and then lower that chin down. Oh, I forgot to change my aperture on that. There you go, chin down a little. Okay, there we go. Now what you'll see is we've got a really cool dramatic light. And I've turned off the other lights so we don't have any separation, but you'll see right off the bat that with that grid, we've gotten a lot less throw of that light on the background. So that background went really, really dark, which is going to give us the ability to do some really cool painting with these other lights. So this next phrase I'm going to use knowing that Seth is probably going to vomit when I say it. It's okay. So we're going to use motivated light, Seth.
Right with motivated. I'm right. You really want to do this live?
No, yeah, always, dude. What, like, is it better when Seth and I are bickering? Because I think it is, isn't it better? Yeah. It's all right. Later we're gonna hug each other, and it's fine. All right.
This is what happens when you leave the door open. I just want you guys to understand what happens.
All right. You're a real doll, buddy. All right. Better be safe than sorry, right? Or they'll blow us up in the comments. So one of the reasons that I do this a lot with professionals when I am just doing that standard headshot is that if I give them something that looks like it might go in Wired magazine or Fortune or something like that, the clients who spend the most money with me are the ones who I make look the richest. Give them photos that they can't say no to, something that's non-conventional. And one of the cheapest, easiest ways to get a non-conventional portrait that's still in the vein of kind of headshot, although the headshot police are out there, they'll tell you right away that it's not a headshot, and that's okay, is to move your body a little bit around the subject, shooting at a slightly different angle, and then have them not look into the lens. And all of a sudden, it's a completely different image. It's such a cheap way. There is a video I did on that in detail here for the Adorama main channel. Yeah, Bill.
Could you talk a little bit about how you're not really aiming?
That's a great point, Bill. Thanks for bringing that up. Okay, Bill just asked me about feathering the light, and he noticed, because Bill is a keen observer of my abilities here, that I very rarely point a light directly at my subject. It's one of the ways that I gain a little more control of the light, one of the ways that I get light to bounce around a little bit more. That basic wisdom when you're beginning in photography always tells you 45 and 45, right? But you'll notice that I'm always kind of shooting a light across in front of the person. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, I think the light off the edge of a softbox is a little bit nicer. And the other is that I very often have my clients lean into me. So if I meter them, like and then I get this all set, and then I lean them in, it's going to be a little brighter. And so I can actually get them a little bit more of an exposure by pulling them into closer to the center of the softbox. So great question, Bill. But I typically use the edge. It's just how I've done it for so long. Because if you're in a close quarter situation in a small space, that means you typically are going to have to use your light modifier close to your subject. Then when that happens, you're going to get such a dramatic difference between the lit and shadow side of the face, to the point where, like, the place where the light hits Gerald's face first is going to be like 2 or 3 stops different than over here. So this gives me a little more even of a transition between the light and shadow side of the face. Now, you don't have to worry about it nearly as much if you've got a lot of room, but when you're shooting close, I feather the softbox quite a lot. Great question. Eric.
Sorry, Bob. So,
Don't apologize. Just be loud so I can hear you. I'm old and the air conditioning's loud. Okay. How did I build my client base? We're going to have to circle back to that at the end. Can we put a pin in that and answer work business questions at the end? And okay, cool. Because I don't want to waste too much of Gerald's time, but I do want to get to that. Yeah.
Do you always have your clients sitting down?
Great question. Do I have my clients sitting down? I have my clients sit down, stand up, hang off of a ladder, whatever will get the job done. Funny enough, one time I photographed headshots at a convention, and it was the entire Norwegian sales team for this gigantic company. It was like 200 guys. The shortest one was 6'6", and the room they put me in had 8-foot ceilings. So like, and I had flown to San Diego for this event, and so I didn't fly with a stool, you know. So I grabbed the piano bench out of the lobby, and everybody it's like 150 members of their Norwegian sales force are all sitting on a piano bench, not at the same time, but they were all sitting on a piano bench. Thank you. I appreciate that, Charles. So I believe it really depends. I have a joke. I photograph a lot of actors as well. I always have my actors sit down because they can't stand still. But for it really just depends. Seated subject is a really good way to get a lot of different poses more naturally. If I'm going quickly in a volume situation, it's almost always standing. So yes. The answer is yes, I do all that. Yeah. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I'd say the main danger in having a seated subject is it changes how their clothes hang on them. Yeah, and their posture. Whereas all these headshots look like everybody was peeing in the woods, you know? Like, yeah, so I think it's, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You see that bus ad, you're like, dude, couldn't wait? Had to do it during your headshot session? No, all right. So let's do a couple more. Now that we've added that second light here.
You got a lens question.
I got a lens question. Hit me with it.
They're basically asking, do you always use wide angle?
No, I do not always use wide angle. The lens that's on my camera 90% of the time is the 50 to 140, which is essentially a 70 to 200 full frame equivalent lens. That's what I work with most of the time. But again, as I said before, most of my work is volume headshots at conferences, and that's the lens I use the most. But in my studio, I use a lot of different, I use 3 lenses mostly. I have this one, 16 to 55, the 50 to 140, and then I also use the 33 millimeter 1.4, which is essentially a 50. Like portrait photographers love a 50 millimeter lens, which we'll bust out here in a second. All right. There we go. Good questions, man. All right, so let's just see how that second light's good. Now, what I have you do, turn your feet to the right. All right, this is going to get playfully athletic, all right? Okay. All right, so when I'm photographing someone seated, people would do this a lot. And this is very submissive, right? So you'll see this, the groomsman pose. People do that in front of the camera a lot, right? This is the human equivalent of a dog tucking its tail between its legs. You're covering your soft underbelly and your genitals. That's basically what you're doing. So, and this is the opposite of someone looking powerful. And and it's the thing I see photographers make that mistake a ton. You got to break the chains, man. You got to stand up tall and get your hands on your sides. But when you're seated, it's the same. You just do it like this. And people are in an uncomfortable situation. Having your portrait taken is the worst. So you got to kind of make it look like it's not the worst for your average person. Models love it. All right, so one of the ways I do it when seated is I tell people to put their wrists on the tops of their thighs. And what that does is it separates your elbows from your body a little bit. And they can just relax their shoulders. They don't have, you just completely relax them. If your wrists are here, your shoulders, everything will be perfect. Good. So with I do this a lot. With your body this way, I want you to turn your head this way. Yeah, your brain is going to hate this. Okay. All right, good. Tilt your head a little, right? There you go. Perfect. All right, there we go. Now, if somebody looks really stiff, I just tell them to breathe once. And then it usually makes it look natural. Take a deep breath. Gerald, let it out till it's normal. All right. There you go. And now I want you to lean a little bit toward me. Raise your chin a touch. Now, when you photograph somebody and it's like at an angle like this, you're going to see that actually bring your head this way a little bit. There you go, Joe. That's perfect. You're going to bring their eyes into a place where you're going to get mostly the whites of their eyes. And I think that you don't want to do that. You want to get the pupils kind of centered. So even though Gerald's face is over here, I want your eyes to be here, if you would. Look right here at my hand and up this way. There. So this way you can still see the eyes. Now take a breath and let it all relax. Good. Perfect. Chin down a little. There it is. And then chin down a little more. There we go. All right. Boom. All right. There we go. Okay. That's pretty cool so far. Don't mind that at all. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add a little more light for depth. So I use this soda can light a lot, this 8100 Pro, mostly as a background light. And we had someone, I think, in the chat ask about this modifier. I got this here, I'm pretty sure. It's just a little rubber snoot. And all it does is it just controls the spread of the light a little bit. And so it actually makes a really cool background spot. This is the #1 thing I use this light for. So one of the things that I do is I try to make sure that the light has a reason for being there. And some people call that motivated lighting. I think it's more of a cinematography term, where you have, let's say, what looks like a light source in the background. It's basically a way of visually explaining why that light is hitting a subject. And so in this case, I take this light is going to be splashing the background. This light is going to be splashing him. But from the perspective of the viewer in the image, it was going to kind of look like the same light source is doing both things, almost like there was a sconce light over here on the corner. Does that make sense? So I always try, if I light the background, I try to light the background in the same direction as the most prominent light behind the subject. And I feel like maybe it's just a me thing, but I feel like it just always looks a little bit better that way. And that's almost always the opposite side of my main light. So if I have one edge, which in a small situation I will, one separation light here that goes on the subject, I'll try to keep that the opposite of the main light. And then if I splash the background with something, it'll typically be from the same direction as that edge light. And I just like the way that looks better. I like it. It feels like it has a reason to be there. Okay. All right.
Really quick, they're asking if you use the zoom function on the 100.
Oh, no, not really. You can, but it still wouldn't be as narrow as if you use we use the actual zoom function. So inside that Fresnel type head, you can actually zoom the element backwards and forwards, which essentially narrows the throw of light a little bit. And I have done that a ton, especially as a recovering wedding photographer, when I'm bouncing light off of a wall, if you narrow the throw of the light, it can, I felt like, I don't know if it makes any sense, but it feels like it goes farther, you know? I don't know. But no, I don't use the zoom function. I don't think I've changed it once since I bought that thing 5 years ago. You know? I know. Look, I don't typically use it because in this situation, it would probably narrow the throw of light, but the shape of it probably still wouldn't be what I wanted. I think that's going to give me a much better zoom, but we're going to see. We're going to put that to the test right now. All right, so we're going to put that at a 30 seconds, see how that goes. All right, just a test. Ooh, too much. Here we go. All right, there. All right, so let's make this work. Gerald, I want to have you turn your feet around this way for me. Yes, please. All right, so do that. Now, if we zoom in here, there we go. Boop, 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 boop. We're going to change this up a little bit. I want to get a little more control of this, so I'm going to change my settings just a little bit so that this main light is putting out a little more power. And then I'm going to adjust my light. There we go. And to 5.6. There we go. And there we go. Now, so what I was doing is that light in that small space was getting a little too strong. And it was already down at its lowest possible power. So I increased the power of this light. I doubled the power of that light. Then I could change my camera exposure. So now that looks a lot darker than it was. And that's why I did all that. All right, here we go. Now I want to get that other light back in there. There we go. Okay. You ready, Gerald? Okay. I have this a little bit. Can you do me a favor and scoot your stool this way a little bit? Yep, please go. Keep going a little bit more. And then this way just a little bit more toward me. Keep coming. Yes, sir. That's what I needed. Thank you. Thank you. All right. All right. Bring your feet 3 degrees toward me if you would. Awesome. All right. Now I want your eyes at me. Good. And now lips gently together. Tilt your head this way. Come forward and down a little bit. Now take your right hand and put it like this. And take your left forearm and slide it down your arm a little bit. I call that the John Wayne pose, by the way. That's the old John Wayne. All right. Here we go. We should be in pretty good shape. There it is. Okay. Lips together just a little bit. And I want you to let's go in this way. Why not some vertical? You know, it's always landscape. So I'm going to come in through the shoulder. It's going to create a little foreground out of it. Good. And lift your chin a little bit. There we go. Yeah, not too shabby. Tilt this way just a tiny bit. Chin forward and down a little bit. Right there, Gerald. Perfect. And now we're going to add a little bit of fill. And away we go. Boom. And now, one of my favorite things is I'm going to change this, because with the Fujifilm cameras, you get all the film simulations. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to Fujifilm Acros green filter, which is my favorite black and white. Lean on your left hip a little bit. There we go. A little less. Right there. Perfect. And then into me at the waist a little. That's it. Nailed it. All right. Lips gently together for me. There. Very cool. Nicely done. Nose this way a little bit. Tilt a little that way. Boom. There we go. Now we're on Forbes. A totally different vibe. Okay, let's take a look.
Quick question.
Seth, shoot.
They're asking why wouldn't you meter again after having your subject move that much?
Why don't I meter again? Great question. Because I did the math in my head. I should have metered for the sake of the audience, but the light is at pretty much the exact same distance. And if I double the power of the light, that means that's going to be a stop difference. So if I was shooting at f2.8 and I changed the light, I doubled the power, I should be able to make my camera's aperture f4, and I should still have a correct exposure. It's not a perfect science, but I bet if I metered it, I'd be pretty close. All right. There you go. Not too bad. How'd I do? Yeah. All right. Okay. All right. Let's do something else. How we doing on time, Set? Okay, cool. Put that lens somewhere. I had a whole nother camera body and a whole nother lens. I had that 33 somewhere, but that's all right. Okay. Let's go ahead and do something in this small space. Let's change it around from a simple headshot. Okay. Are you ready, Gerald?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Thanks. Okay. All right. Can we go all the way back to the wall?
Did you look directly at it and just
I
go,
did.
meh?
My wife calls it a Gary look. It's like when you look for something, look right at it, and then go, I can't find it, honey. And then she goes and puts her hands right on it. So we call it the daddy look sometimes at my house. All right. Although that's a totally different thing when you're going out clubbing, is the daddy look. No, nobody's with me on that? All right. You're going to have to edit this stuff out. All right. There we go. I'm going to build this all over again. Perfect. So we're using roughly the same amount of space, but I want to get something that's a little different. So there we go. That's New York, Chicago, LA. I learned that today, if anybody didn't know that. All right. I'm going to take this as well.
Why am I always changing your life?
You're changing my
Why
life
is this-
like literally one bitter lesson at a time.
It's bitter.
Okay.
I'm not doing this.
Can you stand up? I'm going to have you sit on this New York apple box.
Okay.
That works for you. Go, perfect. Stable enough? There you go. All right, this is going to go right between the knees here. Ready? All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to photograph you. You look like a sexy carpenter, so that's what we're going to go for, okay? We're going to pretend you're a carpenter. What I want you to do is to bring your elbows forward and here. You do that? Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Nailed it. The sexy carpenter photo.
While Gary's futzing, you guys in the chat, if you hit like, Gary feeds his 37 kids on likes. 37 kids on likes. And hit subscribe for all of you asking if this is gonna be up later. Yes, as soon as it's done being live,
On
it's
YouTube,
here
it's
forever.
forever.
Just like Gary's other train wreck of a demo. So you can watch this back as many times as you want. And 2 years of classes just like it. Hit subscribe, hit like,
Look,
make Gary feel better.
I don't want to ruin it, but so far nothing's broken.
This better be your last frame. I am like, yeah, yes, knock on Formica. Thank you.
No, it's vinyl. It's vinyl. Yeah. All right. So let's go ahead and meter that again. All right. So the idea is we're getting completely different images with just a couple of adjustments, the same lights in the same space. Gear is not an excuse. Space is not an excuse. Laziness, now that's an excuse. It's a bad one, but that's certainly an excuse. So you just have to have the energy. And man, let me tell you what, as Seth pointed out, I have so many kids. And I'm so tired all the time. But I like to try and save a little bit of energy for my clients because truthfully, like being photographed well is a transformative experience for people. Have you ever given that to somebody when they walk out like skipping? They come in and they're like, I hate every picture that anyone's ever taken of me except for this one selfie when I was in Cabo 25 years ago. I use that for my LinkedIn. And then you take their picture really well and they have a great experience with you. We have a really cool opportunity to give people something really special. People drag their self-image into our studios and they make it our problem. It's not your fault, but it is your problem now. And that's just what we do. We're kind of bartenders, people tell us all kinds of random stuff, but you have to, without letting your ego get in the way, let them unload a little bit and then give them something amazing. That's kind of our job. And it's the hardest part of our job, but it's also the most rewarding. So laziness is not an excuse, Tiredness is not an excuse. If you're too tired to do your job well, get another job or sell a kid or two, I honestly believe that. And man, I hate, you got to ask for it. And I hate it, but sometimes I really don't want to. But there's never been a time when I took an extra 2 minutes, moved a couple of lights, tried to do something a little bit different for somebody when they left. And I was like, wasn't worth it. It's never happened. Like, I'm always so glad I did. Although one time, there was a guy in my studio, the first thing he did was he came in and he went right for the thermostat and started adjusting it. That's the only person I've ever hated in my studio. He walked right in and over, not even said hi, just started adjusting the thermostat. Like, who does that? What kind of a monster are you? Gerald, would you ever touch another man's thermostat?
So
Never.
So what Gary's saying is, don't worry about your model being comfortable or feeling like they can be in your space and be themselves.
Hey, don't even
But-
pretend like it's normal to touch someone's thermostat before you even say hello.
We're talking about a device on a wall that's in easy access to anyone within the room, right? Is
All I'm
is that
saying, it's a.
and they are sharing that space with you and thus have to be comfortable for the
I'm
portrait
just
they're going to
saying,
you for?
man, you wouldn't like it either. I know you're trying to be funny, but man,
Yeah, but I have an MO of hating everybody. So
That's
it's
true.
like, it's all right.
I want you to just think about it. Put yourself mentally. Let's do a little in the theater of the mind. Someone you've never met before walks into your personal space, walks right over to the thermostat, starts touching it. All right. How do you feel right now? Does it make you anxious? Yes. No, Chris, I see you back there. It's a huge point. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Exactly. I am not wrong about such things. All right.
Someone's saying real dad energy about the thermostat.
Oh man, what's that movie with Mark Wahlberg and Will Ferrell, where they're like, "Did you touch a thermostat?" I know. Who would do something like that? You know, who would touch another person's thermostat? Not me, bro. Not me. All right, let me go. All right, so yeah, I'm on the new lens. There we go. You know what I'm gonna do? I like that. I know I literally just took it off, but I'm gonna put that honeycomb grid back on. Because that light is hitting that background a little too much. Thank you. Can't stand it, can you, Seth?
No, well, some of us are actually professionals. I don't know.
Ah. I was going to get to
No,
it.
you weren't.
I was going to do it. It was funny while we were setting up, I kept knocking things off the shelf, and Seth is like having little panic attacks all over. If you haven't followed the journey of him creating this incredible space basically from scratch, you can understand why he's protective of it, because he bled into this place.
The paint. You do have a question in the crowd if you want to actually pay attention to people for a change.
Okay. Bill has so many questions. Bill's very needy. Yeah, Bill, what's up?
The last Forbes look. What length of lens was that you were on?
I was still using the 24 to the 70. It's a 16 to 55. That was probably, if I had to guess, that was about 40 millimeters, like full frame equivalent. All right, here we go. Oop.
Maybe next time repeat the question, Gary. I'm just saying.
Oh, buddy. You know, Joe McNally doesn't get this kind of guff off of you.
So you're comparing yourself to Joe McNally for the record.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. What's Joe McNally got that I don't got besides money and a career and adoring fans? Yeah.
Joe, I know you're old, but the comment thing down below, leave whatever you want to say about that right down.
Is Joe watching?
I love you, Joe.
Just be like, just tell him I'm a fan, okay? Just tell him I love him and I want to be like him when I grow up. All right. We are. Yeah. Oh, set. All right. Here we go. All right. We're in pretty good shape now. Here we go. And I did lose a stop of light when I put that honeycomb grid on. I went from f5.6 to f4. You will cut the power of the light roughly in half when you use a honeycomb grid. So just remember, especially if you're on a light that's battery powered, honeycomb grid means you're burning up twice as much battery power as when you're not using it. And that really is going to depend on light to light and modifier. But overall, you got it. My dad tried to explain that to me once when I was just starting out in photography. I was like, look, I got this modifier for my on-camera flash. He's like, okay, just be careful, you'll use up the batteries. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. You're wrong and dumb. And he was right, and I was dumb, you know? You're wrong and dumb, Dad. You're too old. I think he was like 50 at the time, you know, which is, I'm pushing that myself now. All right. You're wrong and dumb, and everyone says so behind your back. No, my dad, he's like the smartest guy. He like doesn't talk unless he knows what he's talking about. All right. Remember Sexy Carpenter?
I'm just going to get a therapy
All right.
couch in here.
Give me a little more. Yeah, that's it. Just don't put weight on it.
Okay.
Yeah. I like the beard stroke, but bring it like there. Yeah, that's it. And now tilt a little. Turn a little. And then lips gently together. Yeah, there you go. Thanks. That is awesome. Good instincts. Good. And now, one trick that I do that often creates slightly more interesting images is I have them look over the top of my head instead of at me. It's like an editorial photographer cover of a magazine trick. It's like, ooh, fancy. They're not looking at the camera. All right, try that. So tilt a little this way, and then bring that hand. Pretty good. Just no weight on it. Don't squish your beard. Yeah, perfect. All right, lips together. Tilt a little, and then I want you to look here. All right, there you go. Boom. All right, chin down a little, almost like leaning on. I'm talking too quiet. That's perfect. There it is, right there. Nice moves. Yeah. All right, now here. All right, now what I want you to do is this. This is going to get really intense. Are you ready, Gerald? I want you to look right here, and I want you to laugh at my pet unicorn. There it is. All right, there, nicely done. I do that for my kids. Its name is Clarence the unicorn. If you're watching, kids, Clarence loves you. Okay, here we go. How we do? That's pretty good. Doesn't matter why he's laughing. Just matters that he's laughing. Look at that. Very cool. You see what I mean about like looking slightly above the photographer? It's like such an easy trick to get a slightly different image. It's almost like a cheat code, you know? That's pretty awesome. So one of the things I like to do that looks really good on websites for clients, especially like creatives, artistic types, is I like to create a triptych. It's like 3 images that are exactly the same and just different expression in each one. It's such a cool personality thing for like an about page rather than just a single photo. So in this case, you might have something like this, something like that, you know? Those make really, really killer images. And by the way, I just want to point out that thanks to that awesome Macros G film simulation that is directly out of camera, I have done nothing to adjust this image, which is actually really, really cool. So that's tethering here into Capture One, by the way, in case anybody asks. All right, Seth, we have any questions?
No.
No. All right, we're going to get to Eric's. Eric wants to know how to create a whole photography business. So before we start that, how do you have a 20-year career in photography? Okay, Eric, you ready? Buckle up, buddy. Now we'll get to it. Okay, any other questions about the photography stuff, the cameras, the gear, the lenses, the lights, the approach, anything like that? Pretty good? Okay, you guys ready to learn how to make a photography business? Yeah, anything you like, please. Save me from Eric, please. Wow.
How to build a photography business. So I'm a relatively new photographer.
Cool.
And I'm also a recovering wedding photographer.
Oh, is there a better? Yes, 1,000% there's a better way, but that's not a bad way. So the question was about building a business and then was added to here, like about reaching out, doing free work and cold calling, stuff like that. I will first and foremost say that my entire first website, photography website, was populated with pictures of my friends and family that I took for free. Okay, so like portfolio is portfolio, and it takes a long time, I think, to kind of like figure out who you are as a photographer, who you want to be as a business, you know? And so like I've done ducks and bunnies for Easter, I've done Santa, I've done school portrait, I've done all of it. So it took me years to figure out kind of like who I wanted to be and how I landed on that. So give yourself some grace when figuring stuff out, and people on the internet love to seem way smarter and more accomplished than they are. So in case you may not need that, but in case you needed to hear that, they're all lying to make themselves look better. And anyone who speaks in absolutes or is crappy to someone because they seem like they need a little more help than others, well, they're all morons, okay? Because everybody who I know who is killing it in this industry is generous, is kind, does not speak down to other people. And those are the best ones. Anybody who isn't is not successful. I don't know anybody who treats other people poorly. So
Yeah.
do keep that in mind.
Yeah, treat them better. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, you're very welcome. My permission, I give you all permission to suck for as long as you need to suck before you get good. And don't let anybody tell you you can't suck. You get to suck just like I did when I started out. I wish I had it. I could show you my first paid headshot session I ever did. I should have been in jail for charging that person for that picture that I took. Okay. I think that there's an interesting thing when it comes to working as a B2B business that's different. My experience is that B2B business, that's working for companies, working for entrepreneurs, it's typically project driven. So that means the big money jobs come when a company decides to do something that they need pictures for. I have very rarely seen people become successful in that industry by reaching out to people who have not yet decided to do a project that involves photos. It's more passive marketing that involves being the one that they get recommended to, or being there when they look for it and when they're ready to spend. You're going to have a heck of a Sisyphusian rock uphill battle trying to get $1 billion company to spend money that they didn't intend to spend in the first place. And so my success is narrowed down to this: is you have to have a killer website with great positioning, not just for Google results, but with also now with AI searches. Those principles are still the same. Has to have the best content. There's no keywords. There's no tricking it. You got to be there when they go looking for it. Now, for individuals, it's a little easier to convince that person that they might need photos. But very often, again, when you're talking about business, it's usually coupled with, I got a new website coming up, or I'm rebranding, stuff like that. It's very hard to get people in front of a camera who don't want to be there. Unless they're... Now, I would recommend the cheat code shortcut. You cannot work enough on your website and getting great results for searches. You cannot spend enough time being good at that. Watch YouTube videos, go to master classes, go to conventions, go to non-photography industry conventions, like sit in a room with anybody who can teach you anything about how to get found on the internet. That's how you need to be spending your time as an entrepreneur. The other thing I would say is the shortcut is in the wedding business, which we are both recovering from. Being recommended by venues and planners was like the jam, right? Like that's how good clients get to you. A client that hires an expensive wedding planner is going to spend some money on their photography, right? A client who's getting married in an expensive wedding venue is going to spend a lot of money on photography. Not everybody who Googles you and finds your work to be appealing is going to have money to spend on photography. So I think that's sort of qualifying. And a lot of corporate work is the same. And so you want to be in with marketing companies, corporate event planning companies, and venues that host conferences. And those are great places to get in with. Also recommend being involved with your Chamber of Commerce as a volunteer. Don't just go, like I always say that going to a Chamber of Commerce or a networking group or something and like trying to make those people your clients is like going to speed dating, right? But this is what you don't do at speed dating. You don't sit down in front of a person and go, I came for sex. That's what happened when you go to a networking meeting and you're like, here's my card if you need headshots. You're asking for sex on the first date. You know what I mean? Those types of things are about becoming part of your community, about becoming a good business person. And they sniff people out like that. All those people they wash out, mostly realtors. They wash right out of those groups. So that's a good long-term strategy. But by being involved in our Chamber of Commerce, which has been incredibly rewarding, not just financially, but becoming a better members of our community, we are now the official photographer of the city that we live in. I photograph the fire department, the mayor, the city commission. We get recommended for work all the time because I went in and we volunteered. And I volunteer on a weekly basis. I photograph the entire chamber staff, headshots for free. If they need me for something, I show up with my camera, take pictures of it, and I have for 5 or 6 years. And it takes time to build a relationship like that. So Google, you want marketing companies to recommend you, corporate event planners to recommend you, and then you want venues to recommend you, all not for weddings, if that makes sense. And that plus SEO, that's the best way to spend your time. Cold calling is going to be the lowest ROI you're going to get on work like that. It feels like you're doing something, and it feels good. And every once in a while, 1 in 200 phone calls, you'll ring that bell and you'll get something out of it. But mostly, if you put that much energy into something with a better ROI, you'll be able to build your business faster. A photography business is a small business with a slow growth curve. Most photographers who don't wash out professionally usually hit their stride around year 6. And you're starting a whole new genre. The other thing that I would do is I call shop your closet. Go back through your existing client base and let them know you don't just shoot weddings. It's shocking how many people wouldn't even think of you when they needed headshots because they think of you as their wedding photographer. Do a big outreach to all the people you've already worked for and let them know, hey, we're adding this new service. If you need anything, just let me know. That's all there is to it. And you'd be surprised what kind of results you can get from that. Does that help? Eric, does that help you? Do you need anything else? Any other business questions? Good, you sure? You're so kind to me, man. Yeah, yes, sir. Am I a big, am I a big proponent of social media? I think that it depends on what type of photography you do, but social media, you absolutely can't avoid it if you're in business. I think if you're going to go into B2B stuff, headshots, professional portraits, I can tell you that the most direct work that I've booked through any social media platform is LinkedIn. If you've got clients that are active on LinkedIn, those clients are usually movers and shakers. It doesn't mean everybody who's successful is on LinkedIn, doing a lot on LinkedIn, but you can bet that somebody who's putting a lot of time into making content for LinkedIn is very business focused and network focused. I had a guy come into my studio, and this may seem like a huge number to you. It may seem like a very small number to you. I know this is New York City, where like everything's more expensive than where I come from. But a gentleman who just came into my studio and he spent $3,000 on headshots and branding photography, which is a lot for us. I asked him how he found us and how he made the decision to book with us. And he said, well, by the time I saw the third person I know post the headshot that you took and say how great you were, I knew that I had to hire you when I needed headshots. So 3 different clients of mine. So we focused a lot of our energy now on getting those clients. I start talking to them about it when I'm in the camera room with them. And I'll ask them how they plan to deploy the images, if they're willing to do a collaborative post, if they're, you know what I mean? So, like, I put that thought in their head ahead of time, because new photos means Gerald's got something exciting to post about, which is we're all desperate for that kind of content, you know what I mean? So, but it works best when they post it and tag you more than you post it and tag them. So I would put my energy into LinkedIn if I was going after business professionals. I think I'd start there. Number 1 place to put your energy into is getting search engine results, Google specifically, and then ChatGPT and Grok and whatever the heck is out there. There's an entire new generation of people that are going to search differently than we have been trained by Google to search. Do you ever think about how Google has trained us to search for things, putting in our location modifiers, the language that we use, the syntax? It's all based around 20 years of successful Google searching. We're all trained. My kids will not be. They're going to go, Alexa, can you tell me who the 5 best headshot photographers in Orlando are? And I don't want to spend more than $500. Also, I'd like it to be within 5 miles of my house. Like that is, it's going to be the most natural thing in the world to search like that. So if you plan longevity in business, that shift has already begun for those kinds of searches. So you have to be aware of how people look for things. Right now, I think Google is still kind of on top, but even Google has Gemini, which is giving its own AI results. So concentrating on how people find things. Headshot photographers, branding, portraits, stuff like that, without the recommendation of a marketing person, people hire you like a tow truck, all right? They're not gonna follow you and fall in love with your work, and then 3 years later, they're gonna need you and think of you. They're gonna go, somebody comes to middle management and they go, all right, we need headshots for everybody in the office. Go find them. And then that person, because they're a millennial or an older Gen Z kid, they go to Google and they go, headshots, New York. And then they basically send an email to the first 5 people, and whoever gets back first will do it for the amount of money they want to spend, gets the job, the end. That's it. And so just like if you were to break down and call a tow truck, somebody puts that job, that thing to do, that to-do list item on their plate, they go get it done, and then they go back to looking for ink for the copy machine or whatever the hell it is they do with the rest of their day. So I think that's important to be there when they go looking. And that's the best way, in my opinion, to spend your energy. Social media-wise, I'd probably shift all my energy to LinkedIn at this point if I was looking to do business portraits and headshots. I would probably not even worry about TikTok or Instagram or Facebook at all, unless I was in some kind of groups. Facebook's main advantage is groups. Anything else? Seth, online. Okay, we're just about out of time. So I'm going to hang out. But I just, again, thank you, Adorama, for having me back. Thank you, Fujifilm and Flashpoint. And thanks, Seth, for being my comedy partner. We're going to just talk about how much we love each other as soon as the broadcast ends.
If you guys want to see more of
Gerald, for being so patient while I talked the whole time.
Thank you, Jared. If you guys want to see more of this and talking, he was on Coffee with Creators on the main channel. Link is in the chat. And this is where I'm going to leave you.
Pop my screen up for a second. There you go. Boom. That's if you want to sign up. My education page has all my speaking engagements, my latest YouTube videos, and you can sign up for my email list right there at that QR code link. I send out an email once a week that's pretty cool. Jen, you're on my email list. Is it good? Do I give good email? I do. Okay, thank you. And also here on YouTube as well, if you're checking that out, I have lots of cool videos, including ones I've made for the Adorama YouTube channel. And that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.